Yeah. Immortal technique. El DJ Green Lantern. Third world motherfucker. I'm from where the golden diamonds are ripped from the earth. Right next to the slave castles where the water is cursed. From where police brutality's not half as nice. It makes the hood in America look like paradise. Compared to the AIDS-infested Caribbean slum. African streets with a passport's an American gun. From where they massacre people and try to keep it quiet. And spend the next 25 years trying to deny it. I'm from where they cut your hands off if you make a fist. And niggas throw coca cause the job market doesn't exist. Except slave labor, modern day company store. And peacekeepers don't ever come here no more. From where the bombs that they used to drop on Vietnam still has children born deformed 8 months before they gone. I'm from where they lost the true meaning of the Quran. Cause heroin is not compatible with Islam. And niggas know that, but grow that poppy seed anyway. Cause that food drop parachute does not come every day. I'm from where people pray to the gods of their conquerors. And practically every president's a money launderer. From where the only place democracy's acceptable is if America's candidate is electable. And they might even have a black president, but he's useless cause he does not control the economy, stupid. Lock and load your gun where I'm from, the third world. Son to many places, but I'm third world born. Gorillas hit and run where I'm from, the third world, son. You polluted everything and now the third world's gone. The water's poisoned where I'm from, the third world, son. 700 children died by the end of the soul. Revolution to come where I'm from, the third world, son. Constant occupation leaves the third world, son.
All right, that's good. I just wanted to give the stream a couple of minutes to fire up, give people an opportunity to hop in, play some good-ass revolutionary tunes in the process. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all who bounce in between. It is yours truly. This live stream has been a while in the making. It's been a while in the making. I actually wanted to go live yesterday. I wanted to go live last week, but unfortunately something devastating kind of came up and I wasn't able to do it. Medical family emergency of sorts. And then I had yet another medical family emergency yesterday when I was walking my dog at 3 a.m. and he got off the leash and he was running around and I was trying to get him back and he got hit by a drunk driver at 3 a.m. She cracked his radial bone and I actually have a picture of it. I'm going to show you guys in a second. But yeah, she cracked his radial bone and literally broke it clean off. So I ended up having to spend basically all day at the fucking ambulance or the pet hospital. I was there for like 5 hours. Let me share this. And they put him in a cast. They gave him some pain meds. And here we go. We'll just do full screen. That works. Behold, as I was saying, here's the picture. So yeah, got hit by a car, and this happened to him. So fortunately, he didn't get anything else hurt, but as you can see, that radial bone is like snapped clean off. And so what they did was they put him in a cast, and they lined up the radial bone to the best of their ability. And now he's got to rotate casts like once per week, I believe. We got him on pain meds and anti-inflammatories. He's a little aggressive right now because he's in a lot of pain, but he's over at my girlfriend's grandmother's place, and he's in good company. He's being taken care of. I'm going to stop by and pay him plenty of visits. I'm just going to have to be kind of careful because I don't know if you guys can see it, but the night that it happened, I poured some hydrogen peroxide on, because he had a really nasty gash where he got hit. And so I poured hydrogen peroxide on it, and he didn't like that too much. So, yeah, he has his way of letting me know he didn't really appreciate that too much. But I had to disinfect it, But, anywho, shortly afterwards, a few hours later, we took him to the pet hospital, and we ended up having to pay like $1,200 in medical expenses so they could put a cast on him, give him pain meds, anti-inflammatories, and in fact tell me that his arm is broken. Yeah, no fucking shit. Like, I can't obviously tell from him limping and the fact that he can't even like put that arm down or use it for anything, and the fact that it's like limp, you know. I know the arm's broken. I don't need to spend hundreds of dollars to have the doctors tell me that. And this kind of segues into a little rant I have about American healthcare in general, but we really are fucked. Like, we get fucked so hardcore. Like, I had to pay $1,200 on the spot for this procedure, and they were trying to upcharge me on shit too. Would you like to do this, this, and that? They wanted to put a metal plate. They wanted to graft a metal plate to his radial bone. I'm like, you ain't grafting shit, bitch. So we just ended up putting him in a cast. But it's just so crazy. Like, private healthcare sucks so much ass. Like, even if you have insurance, there's all these little loopholes that insurance companies employ so that they can avoid shelling out on the medical expenses that you have to deal with. Like, unless you have like a really good insurance plan, but even then, like, you can still get fucked. Like, I've had insurance before, and they wouldn't even pay for the stuff that I was trying to get done. Well, I had insurance. Like, I was trying to get prescribed something from the doctor, and even though I had insurance, the company just straight up wouldn't cover. So I'm like, okay, so why the fuck am I paying $100 a month, $150 a month for this insurance, and then paying like another $200 for this prescription per month, when I barely have the money as is to afford all the other stuff that I'm fronting the money for in my life. So it's just really, really fucked. American healthcare just blows so much dick. Like, it's not even funny. Like, we really do need like sweeping healthcare reform, like Medicare for all. In a way, it is kind of revolutionary. Like, I know some people will try to frame it as like a bribe. Oh, you don't see the photo? Well, here, I'll just go ahead and show it again. Right here. We'll share that. You see it now? Yeah, so as I was saying, so basically, I know a lot of like ultras or like people try to frame like Medicare for all like it's just a reform, and I mean, obviously we should strive more for we should strive for way more than Medicare for all in this country. But I truly believe there are a handful of key reforms that, if enacted, would drastically improve not only improve material conditions, but also like basically cause capitalism to melt, because the rate of profit is very low now. And thing is like, if we had full employment, if everybody had full employment, they had access to healthcare, and free college, tuition-free college, guess what you're doing? You are massively cutting down on the incentive to join the U.S. military, because people only join the Army and the Navy and the military a lot of the times because they're poor and desperate and they don't know any better. But if people didn't have to join the military to get their basic human needs met, you would see significantly fewer people doing it. You're actually seeing the decline. Like, they recently passed the draft. Like, they brought the draft back. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but they brought the draft back. So by cutting down / cutting out on basically the war Keynesianism, the sock fash bribes, so to speak, you can potentially cut back significantly on the number and degree of people that are joining the Army specifically for economic poverty reasons, which is another big reason why our system's going to fight tooth and nail to prevent that sort of thing from happening. You know, free college, free healthcare, a jobs guarantee. Like, this shit would literally cause American capitalism to fall apart, and it would segue and bandwagon off into a bunch of other further reforms. But really, at the heart of it is democratic reform more than anything, both political and economic. And these sorts of reforms would go a very long way in leeway of that direction. Now, how are we going to go about getting single payer for all? Not by being democratic partisan fucks. That is how. The way that we do it is grassroots organizing, independent organizing, and you push for it at a local level, get in contact with comrades, pushing for it at a more regional level, and you start building from there. Like, you don't need to declare yourself the Communist Party, the new Communist Party, in order to form a Communist Party, if this makes sense. Because to my knowledge, the Bolsheviks didn't even start out as a communist party. It developed into one over time. But originally, I think it was like a women's rights group or something. I don't remember exactly what the history is, but forever ago, when I was at Liberation School and they were talking about like women's liberation in one of their classes, they told me that the Bolsheviks actually started off as like a women's liberation group. So, like, by attacking these key issues, these key problems that are directly impacting basically every working American, you can segue that into further reforms over time, is basically the idea. So that's what I'm talking about. And I think at this stage, direct action and grassroots organizing is really all we can do. Disrupting business as usual as much as possible. Just participating where we can and combating liberalism and basically keeping the movement from getting co-opted, pretty much. And the best way to prevent that from happening is really just direct action. There's like a legal gray area with respect to your advocacy. What I specifically refer to this legal gray area is like it's not really illegal, but it's not really legal either. I mean, it's kind of illegal, but it's also kind of not. Like there's a gray area, and right along that boundary is where you want to be. And everything I'm talking about is completely peaceful, by the way. Like completely peaceful protesting. Obviously we're not at a stage where we can garner the public sympathies necessary for like, to support militant struggle. We're not at that point yet, but we are at a point to where we can make signs, or we can make shields out of stop signs and out of plywood, and we can form formations and create lasting protesting and striking areas where you have people out there for days at a time engaging in these actions, and blocking highways, occupying rooms and buildings, stuff of that nature. Imagine if you had a group of 30 individuals, like let's say there's this law that's about to be passed in, I don't know, Idaho, Utah, and it's anti-abortion law, or it's like homophobic, queerphobic, like anti-trans type law. Imagine the statements that would send to the entire state and the entire region if the 30-something people that were postponing the vote, that were basically blocking the courthouse, and they were there for days at a time, were all communists. Now, the mainstream media will try to spin the narrative, but that would send a very powerful message if there was like the one group of people, the one group of activists that are like actively trying to prevent and circumvent the passing of this legislation are communists. And that would actually give us a pretty good rap. I mean, yeah, liberals are going to condemn it. They're going to be like, oh, they're violent thugs or whatever. But don't worry about people that aren't on board now. As the movement gets built up and as it begins to topple and it begins to snowball, and you garner more and more people to your cause, you'll eventually get to a point to where even more and more of the naysayers are going to hop on board. Because keep in mind, a big reason why people don't get involved in stuff like this is because they feel like there's no hope. It's easy to buy into the fallacy that now is not the time. We need to wait until a more appropriate time to engage in the necessary action, when there's no time like the present, of course. Yeah. That was my little spiel. But it definitely got the wheels turning in my head with respect to healthcare reform. Healthcare reform is a very good thing, and it's something that I think we should strive for, and I think we should collaborate with other activists and groups and meet them where they are, and slowly but surely work our way towards a leadership role in this movement. Because I see 25 people here. In my eyes, to be a good communist is to basically be a leader in this movement. You are a member of the most advanced sections of the working class. You understand better, more so than anybody else, what needs to be done. You care more than anybody else. The fact that there are 26 people here makes me very happy. There are 26 people here that care. And that's the most important thing. It's quality. Quality is what counts. And that's like the whole point of this channel. Is it's quality that counts. I'd rather have 10,000 subscribers of straight socialists, like straight like Marxist Leninist types, than a million subscribers of just sock dem liberals. Because yeah, sock dem liberals, they might show up to a protest here and there, but they're not gonna understand their own history. For one, they're gonna have a shallow understanding of the history. they're going to have their limits. Being like a progressive sock dem, the likes of Kalinske, and don't get me wrong, I like Kyle Kalinske. I really do. Kyle Kalinske has been consistently reporting on the war on Gaza since the start. He's been really good about calling out the bullshit, and he's earned some, even though he's still basically a Democratic partisan, he's still like, he's earned a lot of respect in my eyes, is what I'm trying to say. But as I was saying, I'm going to read some comments, and then we can go ahead and, because I spent like an hour and a half compiling all these news articles and videos that I want to go through, and I don't know how many we're going to be able to get through, but I will do to the best of my ability what I can. But anywho, comments. I have pet insurance for my dog, but you still have to pay all the cost up front and would be waiting months to cover at best 80%. I'm not going to lie. I was thinking about, as soon as he got out of that operating room, as soon as they gave me the medicine and had him in the cast, I was thinking about just being like, you know what? I'll be right back. I'm going to take him to my car first, and then I'm going to come back in and pay. And I was just thinking about walking into my car, putting my puppy in my dog mobile, and driving the fuck out of there. The only problem with that is they have my real name, and they don't have my real phone number, but I would not advise that you do that. I would highly recommend that you do not do that. And if you are going to do it, make sure they have all the wrong information on you so that you don't get harassed by debt collectors. And the other thing is, don't ever go to that hospice ever again. But I digress. When you say they brought the draft back, do you mean like the draft from the Vietnam era? Actually, you know what? I'm glad you asked this question. So what I'm going to do is avoid bumping into my microphone. U.S. Congress. I don't think it's fully passed yet. Jason Unruh talked about it on his channel. The first peacetime draft. Here it is. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Share the screen. So yeah, September 1940, the United States selective training. No, April 7th on selective service. Where is it? I don't need 1940s news articles. What I need is fucking, actually, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to look up Jason Unruh. Jason Unruh. I've been watching a lot of MMA content lately, so that's why it's all flown up into my recommendation feed. But yeah, Jason Unruh talks about it. The draft is back. Here it is. I hope he links the article. There's Mr. Unruh and all of his glory. How every voted on national defense, military enlistment, causing military recruitment. Military enlistment has declined. How much military, which military branches? The draft is back. How House member voted. Oh, here it is. I think this is it. We'll share this. How every House member voted on the National Defense Authorization Act. The House voted to approve a defense budget Friday morning, and this was in June of 2024 on the 14th. And they overwhelmingly voted to, you guessed it, raise the defense budget, and they also voted to pass the draft. To my knowledge, it's not completely. It hasn't made its way through. It hasn't made its way through the Senate, to my knowledge. I think it just passed in the House. But yeah, 217 Congress members voted in favor of supporting the draft. 199 against. I mean, it makes sense that the overwhelming majority of them. This is the fun little dynamic, isn't it? Between the Republicans and Democrats. You have all these Democrats voting against the reactionary position, but that doesn't even fucking matter because they're not voting in unison. You actually have 6 Democrats voting in favor of the draft. You have, 5, 10, 11 or 12 Democrats that are sitting out. Meanwhile, you have the overwhelming majority of Republicans in favor of this draft. And you have most Democrats are against it, but Isn't this interesting? Isn't this ironic? Just enough Democrats are on board with it, just enough for the bill to get floated and go to the next stage. Um, so yeah, the draft's back. I'm glad I'm an old fuck now, so I don't have to worry about getting drafted. And but even if they were gonna draft me, I'm dodging that shit. I'm not I ain't going to fight and die in no imperialist wars. You can go fight and die in your own wars, Congress. That's my attitude. That's my attitude. So yeah, fragging all the way. I recently unsubbed from Kalinsky because Good Politic Guy is better. Yes, he is. Amen to that. I need to reach out to him again. I've been meaning to try to talk to that guy for a while, but healthcare and education has degraded so much that many young guys weren't eligible based on poor health and pathetic ASVAB scores. Right. That is interesting. I did not know that. Kalinsky is one of the few left of center people who actually adds information to the story instead of repeating the same thing over and over again. TYT is unwatchable. I agree. Hal Kalinsky's pretty good. He's got his limits, but this is like the situation we have to work with. These are the people we have to work with. And this is what Lenin was talking about when he said that you have to meet people at the level of consciousness they're at. Because not everyone, it's going to take a while before we have a significant chunk of people that are of the same consciousness of ours. It takes time to build truly revolutionary class consciousness. So, in the time being, we've got a growing number of progressives, like actual socialists, like people that are socialist aligned, progressive liberals. The DSA, if the explosion of the DSA membership is an indicator of anything, it's that socialism is back on the menu. So yeah, you meet people where they are and you work with them based on where they're at. Because regardless of your criticisms, regardless of your problems with this person, they're who you have to work with. So work with who you can. I'm not saying be an opportunist. Work with people that advances the cause. Work with people that will show up consistently and are in favor of the same things you are and aren't just like Democratic partisan simps, basically. But the thing is, you can even work with Democratic partisan simps on very specific issues. It's unity of opposites, I believe. Struggle, unite, struggle, how it goes. But on very specific issues, but you cannot trust people like that. Because here's the thing, man. Democratic partisans, when push comes to shove, these people are going to be in line with the white guardists, and a good chunk of them are going to be white guardist aligned. So in the short term, there's very little short-term things you can work with them on, but they are not necessarily your allies. Your real comrades are the people that are going to be there with you no matter what. They're going to be the people that will stay out an extra several hours, who will go out of their way to volunteer and participate in your activities, and who are, ready to get in front of rubber bullets for you if need be. You'll figure out who your real comrades are when things get difficult. What do we got here? Building class consciousness. Sorry, guys. I got food in my mouth. Probably picked the wrong thing to eat. Got me some carrots. But building class consciousness also requires to debunk anti-communist historians. That thing is that we have a new generation of people born post Cold War who are going to be a lot easier to indoctrinate than old school boomers. It's funny. If you go to like an old school boomer type, or like a Gen Xer, or like someone who's just like conservative or reactionary, and you describe all the core tenets of socialism to a lot of these people, and they're completely on board. Like, there's a 75-year-old Vietnam War vet at my old job before I quit, who I told him about North Korea, and I tried to talk to him and tell him the truth about the DPRK in my documentary last year, and he thinks they like are like cannibals. Basically, he thinks they're North Korea is like hell on earth. Um, it's just a horrible place where everybody's starving, where they're collectively super poor, but they're also rich enough to afford a city-sized Truman Show full of paid actors. Like, true believer in the bullshit narrative of North Korea, right? I go on to describe all the tenets of the North Korean Constitution. I go through the healthcare, democracy, education, planning, and like literally as I'm describing socialism, and this is in the same conversation, by the way, as I'm describing socialism to this man, he's on board with it. This 75-year-old Vietnam War vet, he's on board. He says it sounds like good stuff. And I'm like, well, North Korea does this. And he's like, no fucking way. He doesn't believe me. He's like flabbergasted, dumb. Like, these are the people we're working with. Like, so that's kind of the key to getting older people to be willing to work out and work with you, is even though a lot of them are still sold on Cold War bullshit, even they're starting to bear witness to the contradictions within the system. And over time, that's going to draw more and more of them to our side regardless, even if they aren't communists, even though they don't identify with it. Because you're going to have a lot of people like that too. A lot of people that just are not ideologically aligned at all, but they're working with you out of necessity. They're working with you out of necessity. Communism emerges as historical necessity, right? Liberals really do live in such a crazy world. Like, if you really believed the retrofuturism of real life America, oh yeah, I think we should. That reminds me, I have something else I want to share with you guys. Before we actually get to the news, there's this article or lefty poll thread I want to go through if I can fucking find it. Here it is. I want to show you guys this real quick. Sometimes I find little gems on Lefty Poll that I want to go through. I go to Lefty Poll. I've been going here for several years now, but I find gems on here, man. I find some really good gems. Like right here, North American buildings are cheap and badly produced, just like everything else made here. I agree. This is not a threat to criticize the appearance of present-day buildings, but to criticize literally everything else that's wrong with the way they are designed. These buildings, they won't last a generation. Yeah, like a lot of these new houses that are being constructed, yeah, the structural integrity of a lot of these homes is not exactly the best. Many of the buildings, mostly homes, in North America built today are made using cheaply processed materials, framed poorly, and built without many of the features required for a building to last. Many of the buildings built today will not last Gen Z, much less Gen Alpha. God forbid the climate crisis or a natural disaster hits this continent, because a shitload of people are going to end up homeless. Because the buildings they live in, assuming they can even afford to live in or use these overpriced and underdeveloped units, are going to crumble instantaneously. Of course, this design is intentional. The landlords that commission these projects don't care about longevity. They construct of their usefulness to society, because people only care about the land that's underneath these buildings, because you can speculate. Because you can speculate. And the money making potential from investments into these buildings. The architect and engineers that design these buildings obviously don't have much say in how the buildings should turn out. As a result of this combination of greed and negligence, what many North Americans receive are clusters of mass manufactured, cheaply produced sludge buildings that will crumble before 2050 and will exist as massive wastes of taxpayer money. And some people on this dumbass continent have the nerve to criticize the Chinese for cutting corners in infrastructural development. And I think these are some excellent points. Because here's the thing. A lot of these homes really aren't built to last. Like, they're not really built with the structural integrity. Like, we're still building homes out of out of wood, like wood, which expands in wet, hot conditions and contracts in cold or dry conditions. Wood, it bends, it warps, it rots, it decays. It don't last forever. And furthermore, the other problem with wood is the structural foundation of a building material is that they come from trees. Um, I'm not saying we shouldn't use any lumber in the manufacturing of homes. Certainly should, but homes should be manufactured from a combination of composite and slate, like hempcrete. There's this really cool concept that I've heard of called hempcrete. Also, cedar. Like I'm just saying there are better building materials that we can use for our homes than what are currently being used now. Uh, Another big problem is just like the fact that I mean, it's all too car centric. Like I've bitched about this many times, but everything in this country is way too centered around automobiles. I'm not even against automobile ownership, but I don't think we should have a situation where every single person basically required to have a car. You know, like that's not a good situation to be in. It's just not sustainable. Like we're already like, even if we do start to transition to electric cars, there's tons of problems with EVs. A lot of engineering issues. Mainly, they're heavier. The internal chemistry utilized in the construction of this battery technology degrades over the course of a decade. As you deplete a battery and recharge a battery, that electricity is stored as electrochemical energy and then converted back to electricity. But through these conversions, the internal chemistry starts to degrade, like the lithium ion starts to break down. So really, most of these batteries are only good for like 10 years, and then they need to be recycled. Thing is that there's a lot of energy and a very sophisticated process that goes into recycling and manufacturing these batteries. But that's not the only problem. The other problem is electric cars. Well, the other problem is like we don't have the power grid necessary to support all these electric cars. We don't even know if we have enough lithium on planet Earth to build this number of electric cars. And if we do, we're going to have to dig deeper and deeper and strip mine more and more in order to get to them. And furthermore, our power grids are already overclocked. Like America's infrastructure is just decaying. We built all of our power plants and our power grid at a time when there were about less than half as many people alive as there are today, using significantly less electricity than what we use today. People not only consume electricity and consume it at an increasing rate, there are also more people using electricity in the first place. So most of our power grids are already overclocked and vulnerable to outages. And so we're talking about taking all these cars, having them swapped out for electric, and what are they going to be plugged into? Where are they going to get power? From the power grid that's already overclocked? You're going to end up with a situation where only rich people basically have electricity, and most of the population is just living in squalor, rotted out houses and fucking cars. Then the other fucked up thing about the suburbs is like suburbia, stroads, malls, strip malls, all these spread out plazas and roads. Again, it's all centered around cars. Another big issue with these is that it's not profitable. As weird as this sounds, suburbs are subsidized. Like they generate no value, they add no value to the economy, they cost a shit ton of energy, leave a massive carbon footprint, are bad for the environment, and on top of all of that, they're not productive. They don't contribute value. The value generation takes place downtown. In most cities, it's actually like downtown where the profits are generated, and then you have the periphery surrounding these cities, which are directly subsidized by tax money. I mean, and there's like a bunch of laws that can go through, and it's this way by design. It's literally all centered around just real estate speculation. You know what I'm saying? It's like literally a huge chunk of our economy is just straight real estate speculation. And so when our GDP grows as a result of investors, like speculators, bidding up the prices of these homes, it's not a situation where these homes are being built superior and more value is being added over time. These homes aren't fucking worth what the stock market says they're worth. like when it comes to like the houses in general. Like none of these properties are worth what they're selling it to you for. The only reason that they're this expensive is because they've been bidded up and speculated to such a heavy degree. And the housing shortage is a meme as well. Like there is no housing shortage. There's a shortage of affordable homes. There's a shortage of affordable housing, in other words. So that's the thing. Hell yeah, it is. I have a scar I want to show you. Hold on a second, guys. Oh, it's the other. Huh, how about that? Well, you can't really see it, but I have a scar running down my thigh. It's like runs down to here. I'm not going to bother pulling the camera down there. But I have this cut, this really nasty gash that I got on my thigh as a result of falling through a rotting roof on one of my old roofing jobs. I was a roofer for years while I was in college, and one of these jobs I was on like a really high-angled slope, and I didn't know that beneath these shingles there was rotting floorboards and rotting frames and plywood. I had no idea. But I was just walking carefully on this roof, and then out of nowhere, it snaps and it breaks beneath my feet, and I fall through it. I mean, I don't fall far, but I fall through the roof, and a piece of wood was sticking out, and it ran right up my thigh, right from my shin all the way up through my kneecap and thigh. Now, I didn't need stitches, but I was bleeding pretty badly, and I actually had to go home for the day because of it. I had a really nasty gash. This was like 8 or 9 years ago. The house is from 1965. I have to change the roof. The roof is made from asbestos. Oh, fuck that. Yeah. Um, Liberals will like use that. They'll act like just because we use less harmful and toxic chemicals in manufacturing that like, oh, things are getting better. Liberals do this shit all the time, and I know this because I have several family members that are liberals, and I argue with them constantly. It just doesn't stop. Um, Without dropping any names, no need to name any names. We were talking about a completely different topic. SA. We were talking about R and SA. I'll censor myself for the sake of the stream, at least until I lift the filter off. But basically, the assault and the abuse, the sexual assault and the abuse of children and women in the entertainment industry, and the ruthless exploitation of women and children in these industries, and men. It happens to men too. Don't kid yourself. It's just less talked about and taken way less seriously. But yeah, they are acting like just because you had like Harvey Weinstein busted, and I'll never forget they were saying, our legal system's doing a great job cleaning up this stuff. Cancel culture. Me too. I'm like, cancel culture does not exist. It does not exist at all. My evidence for this fact is the fact that you have people that have been ousted as like straight up pedos or sex traffickers or affiliation with sex traffickers, and they're walking around just fine. Ain't shit happening to them. Ain't a fucking thing ever gonna happen to them, even though like they're straight up affiliated with sex traffickers and probably are, serial assaulters. But they were using the fact that the Supreme Court or the courts were busting people for like pedophilia and sexual assault as evidence that things are getting better. People are more free to report it now. People have more comfort to report things that have happened to them. And people used to never talk about it. It just wasn't talked about. Yeah, and it's talked about more now, sure, but the fact that an increasing number of people are getting busted for it is actually evidence that it's worse than ever, not necessarily that it's getting better. Like that's like we have 2 million people locked up in jail. We have more and more people in prison than ever before, and this is like the same logic. Well, that's actually a good thing. It means that more people are getting busted, which means there's less crime, and it's thanks to our overbloated prison system. So I was I wouldn't really argue seriously, but they were making this case, and I'm just like, okay, it's talked about more, but it still goes on constantly, and it's not actually getting better. Like that's the biggest thing that liberals will do is they'll look at little positive developments that are going on in a microcosm or a vacuum, and they're like, look at the progress we've made. We're making such great progress. Oh, the system's not perfect, but it's getting better. Even though like all the biggest scumfucks walk free all the time, like people that are guilty of some serious heinous acts, people that we know are guilty of some very heinous serious acts. Oh yeah, no, if there's at least 50 Harvey Weinsteins, there's hundreds, dude. Like it's actually crazy. Like people really underestimate the degree of like sex trafficking and sexual assault and exploitation takes place in Hollywood. It's way worse than like the mainstream media makes it out to be. So, I mean, it's just okay. It's talked about more. A light has been shined on Jeffrey Epstein. People talk about Epstein didn't kill himself, but no one's talking about the fact that there are hundreds of names on his flight log of wealthy, influential politicians, VIPs, rich businessmen like Warren Buffett, Donald Trump. Donald Trump flew the Epstein Express. You didn't fly the Epstein Express just for the sake of it or because it's a nice flight. You fly the Epstein Express because you want to have sex with children and get away with it. Like Epstein was straight up a sex trafficker, and there's a metric fuck ton of sex traffickers, not only in Hollywood. Oh, they're everywhere. Like seriously, they are everywhere. And that's like the fucked up part to me is like we have a blatant problem going on, and these people are constantly getting away with it, and our legal system is fundamentally incapable and unequipped to process these people. Like we're never going to get no justice from this legal system because they're all in cahoots with one another, you know. And even when they aren't, so long as you have money, you can drag any litigations or allegations made against you in the courtroom. You can just pay a lawyer to drag it out as long as humanly possible, even if you get caught doing something really, really bad. You know, you could end up again in a situation like Epstein, like what I was talking about with when Netanyahu inevitably gets convicted. He will see maybe a day or two of actual jail time, and it's going to be in a luxury jail where he has better living standards than me. All right, and he's going to walk free the rest of the week, and he's still going to be able to live and do his regular shit. Like that's what I'm talking about, man. Like if you're wealthy and powerful enough, if you're a wealthy person, you ain't going to prison with poor and working class people. You're going to a bourgeois prison where you'll get a slap on the wrist, and is what it is. That's it, or whatever. I'm sorry, someone hit me up. If you had any brains, sorry. Let me silence my Discord notifications. Discord. How did I forget how to use Discord? Oh, here we go. We are going to set you to do not disturb. Edit profile. Can I? I'm sorry, guys. I'm struggling to turn. Oh, here it is. Do not disturb. There we go. That took way too long. I find reactionaries impossible to talk to. They can't let go of any culture war crap. Well, the fucked up part is what I was just describing in terms of like sex trafficking and like pedophilia. The worst part of it is like it's something that they'll point to, and like right wingers occasionally point to things and that they're correct about. But this is not the problem is that their solutions they don't have any solutions. Like, yeah, they'll point out systematic problems, but either they don't have any solutions or they only want to go after very specific people, or even if they do have solutions, half the time it's more of the shit that's causing the problem in the first place. You know, we all know conspiracy theories about unlimited energy are not true. But if such a technology did get invented, do you think it would be beneficial to the advancement? I mean, truth of the matter is nothing's really for free, man. If there really was a universal hack where we could tap in and get free energy whenever we wanted, it would just get privatized and charged rent. Like let's say we get the perpetual motion machine going. Let me show you guys something. This is a fun little 17th, 16th century piece of early science. But yeah, but perpetual motion is a lot like alchemy with respect to the theory behind it. Thing is that there's always a conversion rate, and you're always going to lose energy. Like, you spin this shit, and it'll spin for a while, but gravity is slowly going to cause this to slow down. Even if you spun it out in outer space, let's say you hooked up a dynamo to this, the second you try to tap any power out of this spinning perpetual motion machine in outer space where there's basically no gravity, second you hook up that dynamo, guess what? You're going to convert this mechanical energy into electrical energy, and this is going to slow down and come to a stop, right? Like, perpetual motion is a meme. There is no such thing as free energy. It all has a cost, and it all has an environmental impact. It's just some certain things. Certain things. There are certain methods of energy collection that are superior to others, i.e., nuclear, fission, fusion. Thing is with fusion is we're like perpetually 2 decades out from I mean, we've made major breakthroughs in cold fusion, but we're like perpetually 2 decades away. 20 years ago, scientists were saying we're 20 years out from having a fusion reaction that yields more energy than what we put in. And 20 years before that, they were saying the same thing. And 20 years before that, and we're constantly 10 to 20 years away from infinite free energy, nuclear fusion, synthetic baby star inside a tungsten dome. But we aren't there. Fact of the matter is that I'm sure we'll eventually crack cold fusion, but I think the way that I think the reason why we're not really going to make any major breakthroughs like that is just because of the methodology and the ways that we're trying to do it now. I feel like we need to rethink. We need to like attack a lot of these engineering problems from new angles that have never been thought about from this way before. And in order to get that, we need to have plenty of creative scientific minds. But I apologize, I'm rambling. But basically, what I'm trying to say is even if we could get this shit working, capitalists would just privatize it, charge your rent. And if you tried to build it yourself, they would have all these regulations. They would have all these arbitrary laws in place and barriers in order to keep you from like profiting from it, basically. It would basically get privatized and monopolized, and they would charge you rent. That is what I think would happen. Because that's exactly what has happened with, water. I mean, we already have like an abundance of water and food and electricity. That's the whole point of capitalism, right? Is it's innately rent seeking, because they're never going to mark down the food in the grocery stores beneath what they need in order to turn a profit. There's like a minimum threshold by which they can mark things down and still turn a profit, which is the reason why they would rather just throw out all their food. Any food that doesn't get sold, they would rather just toss it, because it's unironically more profitable to do that than it is to either mark it down even more or give it away for free, because you need that pressure there. You need people to you need that artificial scarcity, basically. Hence why I was talking about in the comments the other day how it's literally the job of some cops just to guard garbage cans full of food. I mean, you hear stories like that all the time, like about farmers that had to dump all this extra milk, or what else? That's a good example. Or the grocery store example. If we had an abundance of fossil fuel, fun fact, we don't actually know how much oil we have, but if we had an abundance of oil, we wouldn't know about it because the fossil fuel companies would not want us to. And they would rather burn or bury that oil than just mark down the fucking oil and let people have it cheaper for free, But anywho, we love artificial scarcity, or they could just kill the industrial production to generate artificial scarcity. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm about sick of liberals leaning on a 12-step group which do more harm than good. Are you talking about like drug abuse, like Al-Anon, or what? But you theoretically, such a device is possible, such as biotechnology harvesting energy from bacteria and wastewater. Fusion is a huge scam, though, totally impossible, chemically speaking. I mean, I don't think it's a scam. I just think it's going to take us several thousand years in order to crack it, and we may never crack it. Same with like quantum gravity, right? Like we have no way of testing a theory of quantum gravity, like like in order to detect the gravitational effects in order to detect gravitational effects at a quantum level, you would basically need an object with like the density of a neutron star. You would need to like synthesize an object with the density of a neutron star, or you would need like a hadron collider. Yeah, like a hadron collider with like I think what the diameter of the Milky Way galaxy. So just something totally outlandish and crazy that we could never possibly do. And it's because gravity is like the weakest fundamental force. Technically not a force, so to speak. But anywho, of course, when you tell a reactionary the CIA has been the world's biggest drug dealer, either they go off on some anti-government tirade or their heads explode. Well, I mean, yeah. Um, and I think left-wingers should take more time to address these conspiracies. I think they should, because it's been utterly co-opted by the right. Like you have like Alex Jones, and there are legit conspiracies that go on. Some of them are bullshit, like chemtrails are that's probably bullshit. Um, or the notion that oh shit, the notion that like 9/11. Well, now 9/11, my mindset is it probably was just done by like the notion that 9/11 was directly orchestrated by the US government. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think the US government definitely had a role to play in letting it happen, basically. Like, because, I mean, it's our ticket into the Middle East, you know what I mean? Why is Latin America poor, destroyed, and full of drugs? Um, not, I mean, yeah, CIA is a big part of it, but it's mainly the USA. Anywho, now you see me, now you don't. But anywho, let's get to some news stories, guys. Sorry that we spent so long on that. Let's see. All right, I wanted to watch Fox News. Today, we're going to get your daily dose of anti-genocide propaganda. But before we get there, I want to. There's some stories I want to go through. I want to talk about these heat domes because it's been hot as balls lately. Heat dome. Here we go.
It has been a very hot June.
Let me know if
As I
you guys
record
have
this,
trouble
we have
here.
had 13 triple-digit days here in Austin, and the temperature has been as hot as 106. So what is the heat dome, and how has it contributed to this big June heat we have been experiencing? Let's talk about it. So the heat dome just refers to a very persistent area of strong, high pressure in the atmosphere. Now, high pressure leads to a couple of things. When you have high pressure, or the heat dome, as you may have heard it, you have a strong area of sinking air. So beneath the heat dome, air is sinking, it runs into the ground, and what happens is that air is compressed. Well, it turns out that compression is a warming process. So the stronger the high pressure, the stronger the sinking air, and the more compressional warming you get. So this sinking, compressing air, that leads to these hot temperatures we've been experiencing. But it's not just that. Let's think about showers or thunderstorms. What is a thunderstorm? A thunderstorm is just an updraft, the opposite, an area of rising air. So when you are under the heat dome, all of this sinking air competes with any smaller updrafts that try and form, and essentially it squashes rain chances. So not only do you have the effect of compressional warming, but you also don't have any showers or storms forming to provide any heat relief. So that is what the heat dome means. Let's talk about how this has been affecting our forecast. Here's the current upper air pattern. The heat dome has been pretty much right over us. Now, finally, it is moving eastward. So any sort of rain recently has had to go up and over the heat dome. We've been pretty much completely dry. But as we have an area of low pressure from out west, it's finally strong enough to come in and nudge the heat dome away from us. That's the issue when these heat domes, or these ridges of high pressure, as we sometimes call them, when they get so strong, it takes a big system to come through and push it out of the way. So these type of setups can be very persistent. What happens by early next week, though, is another area of high pressure develops over California. It's going to be hot out there. In the middle, though, we get a little dip in the upper level winds, and that is just enough to give us a small drop in temperatures here in Central Texas, as well as small rain chances. Now,
this morning, tens of millions from coast to coast are broiling thanks to an early blast of record heat.
Oh my God, it's going to be hot.
More than 70 million Americans waking up under heat alerts from Iowa through Maine. A stubborn heat dome sending temperatures soaring up to 25 degrees above average and threatening to shatter more than 100 daily records this week. In the Midwest, Chicago hitting 97 degrees yesterday.
The worst part of this is like, there is no relief whatsoever for the animals. Like, you'll have like deer, you'll have birds, you'll have a lot of animals that are not equipped or adapted to deal with these excessively high temperatures, which is going to lead to a greater rate of stroke. And this is just going to contribute to the decline of general life support on Earth. That's like the saddest part of this is like, this is what I hate. This is what capitalism's done. This is Frankenstein's monster. You have a civilization full of people who don't give a damn that their planet's falling apart, or they're too hopeless to give a damn. And so they just go on with their daily lives, going to concerts, going to the bar, going to work, minding their own business. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the rate of stroke went up considerably at this rate. Like, it wouldn't surprise me, like, because this level of heat, you know, especially for the elderly, this is going to contribute to a fall in life expectancy. It wouldn't surprise me if American life expectancy fell to like 70 within like the next half a decade. That would not surprise me at all. Just because between COVID and preventable sickness, just like inferior healthcare, poor public health, heat domes, car accidents, drug and alcohol abuse. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if life expectancy declined into the low 70s by like 2030 as a result of this, because like this runaway effect is only going to get worse.
Smashing a record set back in 1957, and Detroit residents taking a sweltering 101-degree heat index in stride.
A great smothering heat and then a beautiful cool breeze off the Michigan water.
The National Weather Service warning the Ohio River Valley may...
In state capitalist Putin's Russia, climate change is good. For the rest of the world, it is not.
Experience its most impactful heat wave of the 21st century.
You can't be out too long. You have to stay hydrated.
And those blistering temps are now barreling east, with officials in several major cities warning people to take the heat seriously.
Summers are different than they were before.
New York's governor activating the National Guard, Boston's mayor declaring a state of emergency. But out west, the emergency is wildfires, with more than 20 burning across multiple states. New evacuation orders issued yesterday for an entire community in New Mexico. The village of Ruidoso telling residents go now, with 2 fires growing rapidly in the area. And in California,
Make sure you got our back.
the Post Fire north of LA now topping 15,000 acres and threatening dozens of homes. With dramatic conditions in the west and extreme heat rolling east, Americans bracing for a wild weather week.
All right, so back to the heat and adding to the chaos here. Tens of thousands of people here in Pittsburgh lost power overnight after severe storms rolled through, and crews are now racing to restore it, knowing how desperate everyone is for air conditioning. Hoda?
Yeah. All right. Maggie Vespa in Pittsburgh. There, Maggie. Thank you.
Thanks for a long night. Al, good morning. What do you got?
Yeah, good morning. Unfortunately, guys, Maggie put it best. We are looking at a long duration heat event through Friday. These are potential record highs from Louisville, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, Syracuse, Burlington, Bangor, Maine. We're looking at Wilmington. Temperatures anywhere from 10 to...
Don't kid yourself. Ohio's getting hit pretty bad as well. We're in a heat dome. This is just where it's at the worst. It's been like almost 100 degrees like for the last week. And I just got a new job as a professional mover. So I'm going to be working in this heat. Gonna love that. So I might end up getting a stroke and dying soon. But before I do, I'll make sure to have a few video essays complete so they can be uploaded to my channel posthumously.
30 degrees above average for those records for today. Buffalo, not quite close to the record, but the heat index is going to be 98. It's going to feel like that. Triple digits in Pittsburgh. It's going to feel like...
I mean, shit, I can fix a roof. Like, I mean, I could, if you give me the materials, I could build you the structural foundation for a house. I mean, I was only a construction worker for like almost half a decade. I was only going to school for electrical pertaining work for half a decade, electromechanical engineering technology. I mean, I know I can't do your plumbing, but I could definitely get your electrical right, set you straight on that, and I could definitely build you a house for the right price.
90 in Boston, 96 in Washington, D.C. And then we move on into
Like,
tomorrow.
Jesus, 25. So it's like north of 100 degrees up here. My question is like, how did wildlife cope is what I'm curious about. Or like, so what? Are we just going to say fuck you to the wildlife? Is that it? Are we just going to let all of our birds and all of our ungulates die? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me because, I mean, their populations are already shrinking. Like, we've wiped out all the natural predators, like the wolves, the lions, and coyotes that dwell this area. But that's why they have people hunting now, because we took out all the major predators, which kept the population levels of like deer and like rabbits down. And so now we literally need people to hunt in order to keep deer from just fucking like rabbits and being all over the place.
Oh, and look at this, triple digits feeling like in Concord, Syracuse, Altoona, Pennsylvania, 93. Feels like 100 tomorrow in Cleveland, and that heat continues right on into Thursday. We're not going to really see a break in this for at least a week in this area in purple, stretching from New England all the way down to St. Louis, Detroit, Cincinnati. This is a long duration event that could actually be deadly if you are exposed to this heat long enough. Here's the deal now. Through Thursday, this strong dome of high pressure, this heat dome, hangs into the northeast. But then as we get toward the weekend, it slides back down to the south. So we get a little bit of a break for upstate New York and New England, but the Midwest and the mid-Atlantic states on into the Great Lakes still going to be feeling that heat. And you can see, look at these. These are the number of days in a row.
Okay, I think the point's been made. Build houses for free. I mean, shit. I wish I could be a charity, but I unfortunately cannot. Oh, that reminds me. I actually do have a little construction project. I wanted to build a shelter for the homeless out in the woods. I was talking about that, and I totally forgot about that project. I've been too busy being broke and unemployed. So, but it's something I definitely want to do. I do want to erect a few secret homeless shelters around and about with the assistance of some, fellow comrades, and then, quietly distribute that information amongst the homeless. What do we got? The Everglades are fucked. Pythons and foreign trees destroying it. Oh yeah, invasive species. All right, since you've asked this question like 27 times, I guess I'll indulge you. I mean, I like co-ops. I mean, they're not co-ops in and of themselves aren't socialism, but they're nice. You have a business that's centered around the well-being and the health of the workers, where the workers have more direct hands-on say. I think at like a more microscopic level, co-ops are good. Like if it's a company of under like 100 employees, you could definitely work for something larger like a corporation, like like Mondragon. You should look into Mondragon Corporation if you haven't heard of it. Like Richard Wolff often references them, but Mondragon is the largest co-op in the world, and I think like half of its workforce are technically private employees. Like only like a third of the people that work for Mondragon are actually like informally employed within the co-op and enjoy the benefits of the co-op, but otherwise a huge chunk of its labor is outsourced to the third world. But I mean, go figure. Co-ops are cool. They're progressive. There's a reason why you don't see more of them, and it's generally because they're just simply not as competitive as a traditional private firm. I don't necessarily think you're going to get like a material basis for socialism using them. Like, I suppose if you got a bunch of co-ops working in unison, you could have them, generate proceeds and use said proceeds in the direction of socialist accumulation, fund a communist party and all that. But I mean, this sort of stuff has been talked about. And I think, I don't know if it was Luxembourg, but prominent German socialists talked about why, like, this methodology basically doesn't work and doesn't lead to revolution. I think Rosa Luxemburg talks about it. I would recommend looking into Luxembourg just on co-ops or Lenin on co-ops, because they both talk about them. Because co-ops are nothing new. They've been around for hundreds of years. All I'm saying is that there's a reason why they're not the dominant form of private business today. But all in all, if you want the short version, I like co-ops. Do I like co-ops? Yes. Would I like to work for a co-op or start one? Yes. Will they result in socialism, or are they socialist in and of themselves? No. What if the whole country was one big co-op? Yeah. Yeah, there actually is a country that's done that before. If you're so curious. This is a country that was known for doing prominent things such as that. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it had state-run monopolies and state-run industries that, could be considered co-ops in a sense. However, the only thing about that is these co-ops are still bound by market pressures. They still compete on the market. State-owned enterprises are different in the sense that they operate under the GOS plan, or socialist planning, 5-year plans in general. Like under a planned economy, there are still markets, but markets do not dictate the decision-making or the hierarchy of the enterprises. Profits existed and they mattered in the Soviet Union, but they were a secondary indicator. They were a secondary indicator with respect to economic decision-making, not the primary indicator. I mean, there were certain industries where they were the primary indicator because the profitable enterprises were generally used to subsidize the unprofitable enterprises that were otherwise considered broadly socially beneficial. And I mean, that's kind of the beauty of socialism in general. Like you have industries, dedicated industries for various issues or problems, things that aren't necessarily profitable, but they're just good things to have in general. Like good example of this are like workers' resorts, hotels, sanitariums, vacation centers, trains, public transit, things that aren't directly profitable, or space research. Space research is very expensive. It's not directly profitable, but it is indirectly because the technological research and breakthroughs we make in space exploration inevitably bleed over into the public sector. And technology was bleeding over to an problem is that a lot of it was military centric. The Soviet Union did have a military industrial complex out of necessity. But that being said, there was a lot of really unique and interesting. I would highly recommend looking into it. Like they had hydrogen planes, like a hydrogen fueled plane that they were researching. They had satellite technology that was supposed to it was going to be shot into space, these satellites, and they were going to collect light from the sun and then beam it back down for use on Earth. Like there was some really cool, innovative ideas that their research bureaus were working on during the 70s and 80s. And it's unfortunate because some of that technology would be super fucking handy now, like hydrogen fuel cell airplanes. Like, okay, here, the only problem with a hydrogen powered plane is that half the plane is now fuel. More than half of it is fuel. You can't bring as many people on board. You can't carry as much stuff on board. However, it's still a good thing to have because you want to know what the carbon emissions of a hydrogen-fueled plane is? Zero. I mean, outside of any sort of carbon output that may go into the manufacturing process. But hydrogen fuel cells, I've always been high on hydrogen fuel cells. I'm actually more of a fuel cell, hydrogen cell kind of guy than I am a battery kind of guy. Or ultra capacitors. Ultra capacitors are pretty fucking dope. They don't degrade like batteries do. They can store massive amounts of power. And on top of that, they last a really, really long time. The design of capacitors is not that ultra capacitors is not that sophisticated. There is an engineering problem with capacitors, however, in the sense that you can't down regulate the voltage output. If I could describe a capacitor between the energy release of a battery is fixed at 12 volts. It's lower voltage, higher amperage, but with capacitors, it's higher voltage, lower amperage. So the difficulty with capacitors is basically down regulating the voltage output so you don't just blow the whole system out or blow your wad, so to speak, at the same time. But anywho, US Mexico, actually, let's do some women's empowerment. Let's talk a little female empowerment a second.
Surveillance video captured the incredible moment a Tampa woman fought off an attacker at her apartment complex's gym.
As if I keep going, if I keep pushing, I keep fighting, he's going to stop. He's going to let go, and he finally did.
24-year-old Nishali Alma, a personal trainer, told Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputies she was exercising alone around 10 p.m. on January 22nd when she saw a man she'd previously seen at the gym trying to get in.
Whenever he was at the door, I buzzed him in, and he came inside. My thought process was, like you said, like it was just another dude coming in to work out.
But after 25-year-old Xavier Thomas Jones entered, this happened instead.
Next thing you know, I get up from doing my workout and I grab my phone and he just approaches me and not a single word was exchanged. As soon as he was approaching me, I pushed him. I said, bro, what the F are you doing? I said, get away from me. And he kept trying to come towards me and kept reapproaching me.
Video shows Thomas Jones chasing her around the gym before grabbing Alma and pinning her down.
In my mind, I knew I was stronger than him and I knew I could fight back.
The seasoned weightlifter seen here holding her attacker in a chokehold while trying to call 911 before throwing more punches, leading Thomas Jones to release his grip. Self-defense expert Patrick Lockton at New York City's Krav Maga Institute says Alma's quick thinking under pressure was key.
She fought back, and the most important thing
Krav Maga? No fucking way. No way. Unless this is like one of the -6 Krav Maga academies that aren't just like meme academies or like bullshito institutions, you know, McDojos. This must not be a McDojo. There's no fucking way it's just Krav Maga. Because what she was doing there was some jujitsu, actually. Little jujitsu mixed with some ground and pound on the bottom. Jujitsu works, guys. Like, it got her out of this situation. Like, the ability to defensively grapple and wiggle out, fight off your back, move off your back, roll off your back. Jujitsu is literally the art of butt scooting, and it saved this woman's life.
Didn't freeze. She didn't fall into that trap.
Alma immediately ran outside, escaping to a nearby apartment. Now she's sharing her story and encouraging other women with similar experiences to do the same.
No other person should go through this. No other person should have to feel like this. No other person should have to go through a situation like this.
Experts say avoiding an incident like this starts with being aware of your surroundings. And
I love it when there's nothing more satisfying to me than when someone is able to physically defend their own personal autonomy and take back their personal autonomy from those who seek to seize their autonomy from them. This man just tried to seize and assault this woman, but because of her martial arts experience, because she's into working out and weightlifting, she was able to fend off her attacker. I don't care what anyone says. People say this shit where women aren't as strong as men. Here's the thing, man. On average, women are not as strong as men. Having said that, women can train and they can get pretty fucking strong. Women have the capacity to get very strong, very athletic, and with the right martial arts techniques employed, a grown woman can fend off a grown man, even a grown man who is, you know, somewhat formidable, like exceptionally formidable. Obviously, there's a threshold there, but thing is like women are actually a lot stronger and more tenacious than people give them credit for. You know what I mean? Like, so like the fact that she was able to pull this off is pretty dope as hell. I just wanted to watch this.
Quickly if you're in danger.
Getting in the way, creating obstacles, creating an opportunity, a space between you and your attacker. So I'd be going straight for vulnerable. So again, just the eyes, hitting him in the nose with a phone, striking him in the throat, because everybody's soft tissue there, it's soft tissue in your eyes as well, and it's going to hurt everybody no matter how strong you are.
Authorities were able to track down Thomas Jones and arrested him the next day. He pled not guilty to charges of sexual battery, false imprisonment, and kidnapping, and will appear in court next month. An attorney for Thomas Jones did not respond to NBC's request for comment.
The day he was arrested and the day they caught him, I saw the whole thing go down. It was a relief.
Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
Now that's what I call female empowerment, man. I like seeing that. But yeah, that's just a minor story I wanted to go through. Nothing major. Arkansas. So there was a shooting in Arkansas recently. Have you guys heard about this? I don't know if you guys know about this.
Breaking news here on ABC News Live. The deadly shootout at a grocery store in Arkansas. 9 people shot, 2 of the victims confirmed dead. What happened there?
I think this is the guy who tried to start a race war.
And the suspected gunman, what we know so far. Plus, millions of Americans baking in that sweltering heat. Record highs expected, cities on alert from coast to coast and into the weekend. what we're learning and what we're tracking about those dangerous temperatures and how long they will last. And the Supreme decision involving gun rights in America, the nation's highest court upholding a law barring domestic abusers from owning guns, how gun rights groups are.
Watch how these new gun regulations are going to be overwhelmingly used to single out minorities and poor people. Like, whenever legislation like this is passed, the White House and like Republicans in general, and even Democrats, have a habit of leveraging that legislation against minorities and leveraging it against poor and traditionally marginalized groups. Like, so like all this gun regulation shit's not going to stop these deadly shooters. You're not going to stop mass shooters and terrorism in the United States unless you do something about the far right, because the far right are directly responsible for the overwhelming majority of these hate crimes. So if you want to do something about hate crimes, you want to do something about terrorism, you got to address the far right. You have to do something about the far right. But speaking of liberals are like, no, but they have the right to their opinion. They have a right to this, and that. You want to encroach on their opinion. That's authoritarian. And I'm like, you're goddamn right, I'm authoritarian. I'm authoritarian when it comes to circumventing the spread of hate speech and hate crimes and terrorism, because right-wing Looney Tunes are allowed to run roughshod like the Republican Party. Fucking a lot of these spree shooters even write in their manifestos that they're directly inspired by the likes of Shapiro and like Crowder. You know, they'll straight up drop names like Candace Owens. I think the New Zealand shooter several years back did that, like the far right. So again, you ain't gonna do dick about deadly mass spree shootings unless you actively combat the far right. Otherwise, any sort of gun regulations or legislations that ended up getting passed or enacted are overwhelmingly going to be used to target minorities. Like, that's just what's going to happen. Just saying. This ain't going to... You might find one or two instances where a spree shooter might be stopped, and then, you're going to have liberal jackasses be like, oh, see, the system works now. We stopped 2 deadly spree shooters out of 300 that happened this year. See? Progress. The system works. Yeah.
React. But we do begin with that breaking news. The deadly shootout at a grocery store in Arkansas. Police on the scene this hour at the Mad Butcher grocery store in Fordyce, roughly 70 miles south of Little Rock. At least 9 people have been shot, including 7 civilians, 1 police officer, and the suspect. Police now confirming 2 people are dead. Leading us off this hour is ABC's Morgan Norman, who is following this story. Morgan, what do we know so far about what exactly happened here?
Well, Jay, we're actually waiting for a press conference to get started here shortly, but I've been monitoring this really active situation over in Arkansas, as you mentioned, where state police, they are responding to a shooting in Fordyce. That is a rural town a little more than an hour outside of Little Rock. Now, so far, we know that 9 people were shot. That includes 2 people that were killed, 7 injured. We also know 1 law enforcement officer was injured as well. Non-life-threatening injuries. It does sound like he's going to be okay. But at this hour, we're learning that the FBI is headed there to investigate. We know that this all unfolded around 11:30 this morning, again, at the Mad Butcher grocery store. We are still working to learn what led up to all of this. But as you can imagine, Jay, the chaos being in a grocery store, outside of grocery store in a parking lot, and hearing gunshots is something that we've seen before and happening all over the country. Of course, we've had more shootings than days of the year at this point, and now we're at this particular situation.
There are more shootings than there are days in the year. You hear that, buddy? Hear that, folks? More shootings per days than there are in a year. Or there are now more shootings that happen on average in this country than there are days in the year. So that basically means every single day, if not multiple times a day, someone is going out there and trying to kill people. This is the symptomatic of a deeply, deeply sick and deranged society. America is a deeply sick nation. It is a sick nation full of sick people with an anemic, impotent governments, fundamentally unequipped to deal with any of these problems. So what I was going to look up was, I think, the race war. Let me see. Dylan Roof. Man plotting mass shoot. Oh, yeah, in Atlanta, right?
Breaking news here on ABC News Live.
No, that's Arkansas. So I don't know what the motivation is of the Arkansas shooter, but there's someone, there is the Atlanta shooter trying to incite a race war. I go click on the New York Times, but they're shitty and they won't, and they put up paywalls. An Arizona man planned a mass shooting targeting African Americans and other minorities at a rap concert in Atlanta in May, looking to incite a race war. Mark Prieto was indicted by the federal grand jury Tuesday on charges of firearm trafficking, transfer of firearm to use in a hate crime, and possession of an unregistered firearm. Yada, 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 yada. I mean, it's the story as old as time. But what I was going to tell was that both sides, that's right, I'm invoking both sides of this issue are retarded. Well, let me rephrase that. I know some of y'all don't like it when I use that term. So both sides are fundamentally anemic. They are completely bankrupt with respect to their understanding of the phenomenon and the solutions. Democratic partisans just want to pass gun regulations, which are going to do very little in terms of curtailing. Like, I don't doubt that they will curtail the number of spree shooters. I don't doubt it at all. I don't doubt that it might make a small difference, but it's not going to be nearly enough. And it's not really addressing the fundamental core issue of the problem. On the other hand, you have Republican partisans that just want it to be the Wild West. No regulations. Guns, guns, guns. The firearm lobby is obviously intimately fornicating with the Republican Party, so obviously, they're going to want minimal regulations, and they're actually profiting from this. They profit from the fear. Both sides profit from fear. America is a country full of people that are deeply, deeply filled with fear. Fear of their neighbors, fear of their fellow countrymen, fear for their own safety, fear for the future, fear for their own economic security. This is a country with popular policy that is drummed up and enacted based predominantly on fear, with very little rationale or understanding going into it. There's a lot of toxic positivity that goes into it as well. I mean, that's kind of one of the defining stones of liberalism. It's like one of the cornerstones of liberalism is toxic optimism. But basically, neither side has the correct solutions to the problem. Both sides both sides are not going to address the issue. They will never address the core fundamental issue with the problem. Instead, you have cynical opportunists that are going to politicize the issue and use it to further their own agenda. I mean, kind of like what I'm doing, only my agenda is to actually solve the problem. The agenda of the Democrats is to get elected. The agenda of the Republicans is to get elected. The agenda of the firearms lobby is to sell gun nuts on the fear of big government coming to take their guns, So the Republican partisans will make appeals to mental health crisis. This isn't a gun problem, this is a mental health problem. Really? So are you in favor of a comprehensive single-payer national health care plan along with a slew of government reform and social reform to address the widespread violence and hate crimes that are transpiring before our very eyes? Crickets. Capitalists elsewhere don't tolerate theocratic polluting public space the way people do here. Oh yeah. To be honest, religion has always been a tool of the ruling class, and it really is interesting how it changed materially along with the transition from feudalism to capital. I mean, it's still part of the superstructure, and I think to an extent it'll be integrated within the superstructure of socialism. I don't think religion is going to go away anytime soon, but I do believe over the next several decades, several centuries, people are just going to become increasingly secular. Religion will sort of wither, and there will be fewer religious people over time, and the religious people that you do have are going to be secularized. You're going to have secular Christians, secular Muslims, and so on. Religion is an opiate fed to control. Well, yeah, it's copium. Religion is the ultimate cope, man. It is cope for working people whose lives are fucking shitty and short, miserable lives, and who are being exploited and abused by their oppressors. But here you have the Bible coming along saying that the least will be first and the first will be least in heaven. Something eye of a needle. Like Jesus basically said in a passage, you basically can't go to heaven if you're rich. And, you have all these passages about admonishing the rich and giving to the poor and all that. And, being like, oh, if you're poor, you're going to go to heaven. So your short, tragic life wasn't for naught. You kept to the faith. So, you're going to be awarded in paradise or whatever. And you're going to be the one on top while the wealthy and powerful are going to be subordinate. It's a nice little fairy tale, nice little fantasy, nice little way to help people cope with the absolute horrors of their own situation. But religion's also a cope for other things as well. There's the class dynamic I just discussed. There's also the existential dynamic as well, as in people coping with the fact that they are going to die someday. Like, here's the thing, man. We're all going to die. We're all going to die, all right? Sooner or later, it's going to happen, Can't say when, but we're all going to die. And life is pretty damn short when you consider cosmic scales, billions of years we're working with. Life is pretty damn short. And so people want to know, they want to believe, oh, there has to be something after this. There's no way I'm just going to be here for like 70 fucking years and then that's it. They want to believe something else is happening after that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to say I'm not necessarily anti-religious. I don't have a problem with Christianity or Islam. What I have a problem with is the greater institutional aspects of like Christianity. Like, you got these McChurches, like, I don't know if you guys know Crossroads. You've got McChurches like Crossroads Church, where you'll have Christians going in, and it's sort of like the McDonald's of churches. You'll have pastors just shilling Republican propaganda. The biggest problem with religion as an institution, I'm not saying it can't be repurposed towards more progressive ends. On the contrary, I've met many religious people, Muslims in particular, that are actually quite progressive. Like, the average Muslim in America is actually more tolerant and progressive and like peaceful than overwhelmingly Christians are. Like, Muslims are like super progressive in the United States. It's only in the Middle East where you see a lot of like reactionary Muslims, like the Wahhabi Islam, the Salafis. You have like these ultra conservative theocrats that have been propped up and given infinite resources that are in charge of these oil baronies, these OPEC oil baronies, like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, and they're just propped up by Western countries off of their oil sales that are, and mind you, these are governments that are completely disconnected from the masses because their revenue doesn't come necessarily from taxes. Their revenue comes from oil export. So there's a disconnect, a huge disconnect between the interests of the masses and the interests of these governments and like the oil baronies in charge. I mean, if anything, there is a revolutionary character residing within the Middle East. It just hasn't been tapped into yet. And it hasn't been tapped to in a while because it's been buried and deliberately destroyed by, the CIA for decades and MI6. Like, every single time you have a progressive figure, progressive individuals or movements like, Gaddafi, I'm talking about him, they always get overthrown. They always get destroyed. And right-wing radical jihadists get armed and inflated everywhere. And that's the reason why the Middle East is so fucked up. I mean, it was after the end of the Ottoman Empire, during World War I, all these artificial boundaries were redrawn. New countries, new maps, new borders were drawn. And the Middle East is a very diverse melting pot of Arabic tribes. In fact, the very term Arab itself translates to nomad from Old Middle English, I believe. And you had some groups that vibed well and came together, and then you had other groups that were mortal enemies. And you're having like boundaries drawn. Let me get Microsoft Paint out. So like, it's a similar situation with like Africa, where where's Paint? There's Paint. So you'll have a situation like this where you'll have like various like populations and ethnic groups like around and about. Like, we'll say like a red right here, a lot of little green right there. And that's where there's crossover. And you'll have another group over here, and then another group over there. And some of these groups get along well, some of them don't. And what you'll do is you'll have dividing lines drawn, and these dividing lines will overlap and cross. So let's see, this group in pink right here, oh, they just got separated. This is the border of a new country, and it got drawn up by Britain. What about these two guys? They hate each other. Yellow and red, they hate each other. Oh, well, they just so happen to be a country now. See this? See this? These guys are now a country. These two groups that don't get along at all, that don't like each other, are now of the same nationality. Groups over here that are belonging to the same tribe are now separate nationalities. And you had these borders that were artificially drawn and imposed. And then you had the emergence of pan-Arabism in the Middle East. You had figures like Umar Mukhtar, Gamal Abdel Nasser, and a lot of other pan-Arab figures, very progressive nationalists, progressive revolutionary nationalist types. Many of them were socialists. Nasser, Gaddafi were both socialists. Many of them were unaligned during the Cold War. Well, we proceeded to topple and murder them all, basically. Like, they murdered Gaddafi. Nasser died into an old age, but his government ended up getting co-opted and basically cooed out by reactionaries over time. You have like socialist Afghanistan that was toppled by the Mujahideen without the Soviet Union there to back and enable the government. It collapsed into the early to mid 1990s. So there was a progressive character at one point, but it is no more. As I was saying, but yeah, religion is straight up copium. I mean, and I understand it. I get it. I'm turning 30 years old soon. I'm pushing 30, so I'm going to be working on my last will and testament and a manifesto. You know, just because, I mean, not that I think I'm going to die anytime soon. I think I'm going to be fine. I hope I live a long time. But you never know, you know, because statistically, every decade that you're alive, I'm going to open up pain again. There's another quick little point I want to make before I actually move on to the fucking topic that I wanted to today. So yeah. Just draw this real quick. And there we go. Share screen. Stream. Here we go. Share. All right, cool. You guys see this? You guys see this? Okay, good. You guys see it. All right, so it's an exponential curve. So let's pretend each little marking right here is a decade. That's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, etc. You get the point. And then what we have is it's kind of like an exponential function over time, but it's like death rates. So when you're down here, you know, the first period of life, I mean, anything can happen. Accidents still happen, but so far things are going good. Relatively low mortality rate. But then as soon as you get to the 30-year threshold, something interesting happens. You see this? Oh, shit. This is what happens over time. With every decade that you're alive, you are exponentially more likely to die than the previous decade, right? But fortunately, I'm only here. I've got plenty of time. But I've seen statistical charts like this. I saw one forever ago, and I don't know where it is. I ought to dig it up. But basically, this is what I'm talking about. So I'm just saying, after a certain age, there are certain things you should be doing just to prepare for the inevitable, so to speak. The problem with pan-Arabism is that Arab is such a fake, made-up identity, it doesn't work to connect people. Nobody's Arab except the Saudi Arabians. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that I exactly talk about that in my documentary. In my documentary, I was talking about how these Arab, like all these tribes, these Middle Eastern tribes, have very little in common with one another. And then many of them are at odds, rivaling one another. Gaddafi takes power in, say, Libya, and now he's trying to unify them under a single identity within this highly diverse melting pot of a nation. And For decades, he struggles to do so. He implements democratic reform. What do these tribals proceed to do? They proceed to conspire against one another and try to basically cynically weaponize this democratic reform so that they can garner clout for their tribe, directly conspiring against others and directly undermining the democratic process. It's part of the reason why, Gaddafi had such a hard time implementing direct democracy while he was alive. It wasn't because direct democracy doesn't work. It's because you have all these groups that are at odds with one another that are being, he's trying to unify them under a fake nationality, basically. And they're having none of it because for centuries they've been conditioned to see themselves as different. So his biggest mistake was trying to unify these tribes on national grounds, when what he should have been doing was trying to unify them on class grounds. You want to know what brings people of diverse people together? Shared common material interests, because it doesn't matter if you're from the Kadafa, it doesn't matter if you're Bedouin or part of tribe XYZ. If you're a working person, you're going to share collective material interests with those other working people. And this is precisely the number one thing that worked to the detriment of Gaddafi's Libya, is that he didn't put nearly enough emphasis on the class character of the revolution. And he actually rejects the class character of the state. And he rejects the concept of class dictatorship entirely. And it's part of what undermined socialism. It's part of what basically wrecked socialism from the start in Libya. So Libya, was it socialist? Yes and no. It wasn't like the Soviet Union where it had like a planned economy, but it had a very robust social safety net. Very, very robust. Very progressive figure. Gaddafi did wonderful things for his people while he was alive. Yeah, it's really annoying since the compared modern day Israel to the Kingdom of Israel and then say how the kingdoms of Israel is relevant to the modern day. Yeah, I know. Israel is such a fucking LARP country, dude. I swear to God. Yeah, we have a book that shows, even though we have no evidence that we're direct descendants of the original inhabitants of Jerusalem, even though this was a conflict, the divide and conquest of Israel and Jerusalem under the Romans occurred like 2,000 years ago, even though we have no connection, material or otherwise, to the land or the people. We don't have any evidence we descend from here. And even if we did, it wouldn't justify what we're doing. Despite all of this, they're like, yeah, bro, I'm Israeli. They even invented a LARP language for their country. Like, the Israeli language is a LARP language, and Israel as a country is a LARP country. It is a meme country. It is a fake country that has no right to exist. And that is a hill that I will gladly die on. A lot of people are in favor of a two-state solution. Okay, so this person, it's like saying, my house. I live in my house. Someone comes along and takes most of my shit at gunpoint. And then, my neighbors come together and they decide, how are we going to handle this? Well, my neighbors collectively agree. Some of them are like, there should be a divide solution where he gets to keep half of your shit, even though he stole from you and it wasn't his to take in the first place. And then you have others that are like, oh, well, you're a piece of shit and an asshole. You're a violent and crazy person for wanting to use violence to take your shit that was stolen from you back. That's basically the situation. While he continues to take my shit and there's a complete disregard, everyone in the neighborhood's taking a blind eye, including the cops. That's the state of Israel. It has no right to exist. None whatsoever. It is a fascist ethno-state that was dropped on top of another sovereign nation 70 years ago following the end of World War II. And if there's anything, number one criticism I have of Stalin, and this ranks above everything, man, like the famine of 1931, the deportations, the purges, like literally, fuck all that. The biggest fuck up of the Stalin administration was voting to ratify the creation of the state of Israel, like straight up. I understand why the Soviets were initially supporters of Israel, like early on. I get it, but they were deceived, and I don't think they could have foresaw it turning into basically a fascist ethno-state. So, if there's one policy where the Soviets shit the bed, it's definitely voting to ratify the creation of the state of Israel. Israel is an American-backed DMZ. Yep. I'm gonna read some comments. But yeah, state capitalism. I find the very notion of being white disgusting. My ancestors were Celtic, Scandinavian, and I resent some American moron telling me to ignore my own. Well, yeah, whiteness it really is a social construct if you think about it. It's based on skin color nowadays. Who was and wasn't considered white has been debated. There are, to this day, idiots that say Slavs aren't white, the Irish aren't white. I'm not white because I'm half Italian. You'll have people like that where only British, French, and Germans are white. And nowadays, white nationalists are like, you just have to have the correct skin color to be considered white. I don't know. I don't completely understand the nature of my heritage, but what I can tell you is that I am a mix of nationalities. I'm pretty much your standard basic bitch European mutt. I know I got some Anglo-Saxon in me. I definitely know I have Italian in me. My mother's Italian. She's an Italian immigrant. But other than that, don't know what my ethnic background is. Don't really care. I'm just American. I'm just an American, But American isn't an ethnicity. That's more of a nationality. But current HP government is supporting the Zionists while hiding it. I think on that note, we should finally get to the, wow, I meant to go through this stuff way sooner, but it's all right. We can finally touch up on the Israeli-Palestine conflict. I have a long number of articles to go through, and I'm going to make sure to timestamp everything when this live stream is over. For those of you who are interested in coming back, let's do this. Boom. Boom.
Live now from Fox, I'm Stephanie Quinu, and our next event takes us out to Washington, D.C. Former President Trump speaking to a very large crowd of conservative and faith voters, and he was delivering a number of messages. So we do want to share some of those remarks that he spoke about just a short time ago.
All right. Let's go to this article instead. Strapped down, blindfolded, and held in diapers. Israeli whistleblowers detail abuse of Palestinians in shadowy detention center. And I'm going to make sure to include all these articles in the description after the stream's over. But anyways, I'm going to read some excerpts from this because this is basically talking about the concentration camps in Israel. At a military base that now doubles as a detention center in Israel's Negev desert, and I apologize if I butcher the pronunciation of any words that I'm about to read off, but an Israeli working at the facility snapped 2 photographs of a scene that he says continues to haunt him. Rows of men in gray tracksuits are seen sitting on paper-thin mattresses, ring-fenced by barbed wire, all appear blindfolded, their heads hanging heavy under the glare of floodlights. A putrid stench filled the air, and the room hummed with the men's murmurs. The Israeli who was at the facility told CNN, forbidden from speaking to each other, the detainees mumbled to themselves. We were told they were not allowed to move. They should sit upright. They're not allowed to talk, not allowed to peek under their blindfold. Guards were instructed to scream uskat, shut up in Arabic, and told to pick people out who were problematic and punish them, the source added. CNN spoke to 3 Israeli whistleblowers who worked at the side team in desert camp, which holds Palestinian detainees during Israel's invasion of Gaza. All spoke out at the risk of legal repercussions and reprisals from groups supportive of Israel's hardline policies in Gaza. They paint a picture of a facility where doctors sometimes amputated prisoners' limbs due to injuries sustained from constant handcuffing, of medical procedures sometimes performed by unqualified medics, earning it a reputation of being a paradise for interns, and where the air is filled with the smell of neglected wounds left to rot. So, gangrenous wounds, you have people getting amputated, but that's not even the worst of it. We were told they were not allowed to move, or that according to the accounts, the facility some 18 miles from the Gaza frontier is split into two parts. Enclosures where around 70 Palestinian detainees from Gaza are placed under extreme physical restraint, and a field hospital where wounded detainees are strapped to their beds, wearing diapers, and fed through straws. They stripped them down of anything that resembles human beings, said one of the whistleblowers, who worked as a medic at the facility field hospital. The beatings were not done to gather intelligence. They were done out of revenge, said another whistleblower. It was punishment for what they, the Palestinians, did on October 7th, and punishment for their behavior in the camp. Responding to CNN requests for comments on all the allegations made in this report, the Israeli military, known as the IDF, said in a statement, quote, "The IDF ensures proper conduct towards detainees in custody. Any allegation of misconduct by IDF soldiers is examined and dealt with accordingly. In appropriate cases, MPCID, Military Police Criminal Investigation Division, investigations are opened when there is a suspicion of misconduct justifying such action." And not shit is being done about this, by the way. This is totally full of shit. This is just Hasbara propaganda. This isn't actually being investigated. IDF soldiers aren't going to be held to account for this. If it's the high-ranking IDF officials that are running this operation in the first place. Like, it's literally the IDF are setting up concentration camps. The IDF did not directly deny accounts of people being stripped of their clothes. Instead, the Israeli military said that the detainees are given back their clothing once the IDF has determined that they pose no security risk. Even though one of the accounts straight up said that they're just straight up innocent people that the state of Israel is maliciously torturing arbitrarily for its own sadistic pleasure. Reports of abuse at SDE Teman have already surfaced in Israeli and Arab media after an outcry from Israeli and Palestinian rights groups over the conditions there. But this rare testimony from Israelis working at this facility sheds further light on Israel's conduct as it wages war in Gaza, with fresh allegations of mistreatment. It casts more doubt on the Israeli government repeated assertions that it acts in accordance with accepted international practices and law. Oh yeah, that's hilarious. Detained in the desert. The Israeli military is acknowledged partially covering 3 different military facilities into detention camps for Palestinian detainees from Gaza since Hamas led over October 7th attack on Israel, in which Israeli authorities say about 1,200 were killed and over 250 were abducted, and the subsequent Israel offensive in Gaza, killing nearly 35,000. That's only the people we know about for sure, by the way. People, according to the Strict Health Ministry. These facilities are SDE Teman in the Negev Desert, as well as Anatot and Ofer military bases occupied in the West Bank. The camps are part of the infrastructure of Israel's unlawful combatants law, an amendment legislation passed by the Knesset last December that expanded the military's authority to detain suspected militants. We're not even at the best part yet. CNN interviewed over a dozen former Gazan detainees who appeared to have been released. They said they could not determine where they were held because they were blindfolded, but the details of their accounts tally with those of the whistleblowers. "We looked forward to the night so we could sleep. Then we looked forward to the morning in hopes that our situation might change," said Dr. Mohammed Al-Ran, recalling his detainment at a military facility where he said he endured desert temperatures, swinging from the heat of the day to the chill of night. CNN intervened him outside of Gaza last month. Al-Ran, a Palestinian who holds Bosnian citizenship, headed the surgical unit at northern Gaza's Indonesian hospital, one of the first to be shut down and raided as Israel carried out its aerial, ground, and naval offensive. He was arrested on the 18th of December, he said. He was stripped down to his underwear, blindfolded and his wrists tied, then dumped back into a truck where, he said, the rear naked detainees were piled on top of one another like they were shuttled to a detention camp in the middle of the desert. So yeah, they just arbitrarily gathered up a bunch of random fucking people that they think may or may not be Hamas, with like bullshit suspicions and trumped up charges, and then they proceed to stack them on top of one another like Legos and take them to this concentration camp. Al-Ran was held in the military detention for 44 days. Our days were filled with prayer, tears, and supplication. this eases our agony. We cried and we cried. We cried for our nation, we cried for our community and our loved ones. We cried for everything that crossed our minds. And this isn't even the worst part. But yeah, strapped to a bed in the field hospital. What I felt when I was dealing with those patients is the idea of total vulnerability. Just being there felt like a complicit in abuse. This must be the Israeli soldier, the whistleblower. The same whistleblower also said he witnessed an amputation performed on a man who had sustained injuries caused by the constant zip tying of his wrists. The account tallied with details of our letter authored by a doctor working at the SDE Timon published in the Haaretz in April. They stripped them down for anything that resembles human beings, concealed from the outside world, so it's a secret detention center. So yeah, I've got another one for you guys. I'm looking for another article I got here, but this is just the surface. There's way more twisted and gnarly shit going on right now. Here we go. Next article. Dead or Alive, New York Times report reveals torture, abuse inside of Israel's detention center. Systematic abuse. My colleagues didn't know whether I was dead or alive, reported the Times, quoting Mohammed Al-Kurdi, 38, an ambulance driver. So these are just like innocent bystanders. These aren't even known military targets. They're like, social workers, hospital workers, just innocent people. And they're just being rounded up and imprisoned. The investigation revealed 1,200 Palestinian civilians were detained at the SDE Timon in demeaning conditions without the ability to plead their cases of a judge for up to 75 days. Additionally, detainees were denied access to lawyers for up to 90 days. Broken ribs. An Israeli soldier who served the SDD Timon disclosed to the New York Times that his fellow soldiers often bragged about beating detainees, and he observed signs of such treatment. Speaking on condition of an autonomy to avoid persecution, he said a detainee had been taken for treatment at the site's makeshift field hospital with a bone that had been broken during his detention, while another briefly taken out of sight and returned with bleeding ribs around his cage. Was briefly taken out of sight and returned with bleeding around his rib cage, the report indicated. The soldier said that one person had died from trauma injuries to his chest, though it was unclear whether his injury was sustained before or after reaching it was definitely before. And if it wasn't before, they broke his ribs 15 minutes before throwing him in the concentration camp. Disco room. Oh, of the 4,000 detainees housed since October 25th, 25 have died, either at the site or at being brought to nearby civilian hospitals. Detainees told the New York Times that a few days after the arrival, they were brought to a separate enclosure that detainees called the disco room because they were forced to listen to extremely loud music that prevented them from sleeping. Oh, so a little sleep deprivation. We got that going on. But this isn't even the best part. This ain't the best part at all. You guys ready to see the best part of what's going on in these detention centers? Well, let's.
ايش اسمك؟ مدرد حلال؟ قديش عمرك؟ 30 سنة 29 قديش لك محبوس عندنا؟ مدرد حلال؟ قديش عمرك؟
Can I full screen you? There we go.
30 سنة 29 قديش لك محبوس عندنا؟ شهر.
So is this the face of a man who's currently healthy? Is this the face of a man who is being provided reasonable accommodations inside a detention center in times of war? Does this look? Is this the face of a man who is currently in good health and whose well-being and safety and dignity has been secured?
شو الظروف اللي عشتها هنا في السجن؟
هذا كابوس. ايش سووا فيك؟ طلعوني علي طيب. عذبوك؟ عذروني. ايش عملوا فيك؟ ضربوني بالسجن.
was beaten and
مرات في الشطاف ما تطلع فوق سمعت لي من
I think that they are masters of psychological torture. In addition to what's happening in Gaza, I also went through that in 2009 when I was taken into administrative custody. And a lot of what Mr. Badr is saying, I'm remembering right now. And we can't forget about the thousands that are right now in administrative custody in Gaza. We can't forget about the 7,000, 13,000 now, plus the prisoners that are in the Israeli prisons right now.
شفت في أسرى اسمها أسرى الأسرى اللي شفتهم هم اللي كانوا في السجن كنت أكل أشرب جبن خبز وهذا وتفاح بندورة وخيار. بتضبط في الحديث؟ لا. الأسرى وراك صعب ولا كيف؟ الأسرى صعب.
احنا خطة علاج يعني اللي يعطوه يعني والله ان شاء الله يشفي ويعافيه.
Oh man, this isn't the one. All right. No, but there's a specific report. Anal rape torture is what it is. There's a specific report of like people like straight up getting raped in these camps. Inside SDE Teeman, the base. Well, hold on. It's from New York Times. That's a problem. If I can find it. It's a UN report of Israeli fuck it. I'm just gonna... Actually, you know what? Wait. I'm just gonna pull this up instead. I'll let Bad Empanada play it. I'll just pull up his video, fuck it. I can't find the article. I thought I had it saved.
This is unfortunately a paywalled article, so when I go in here, as you're going to see, it's paywalled. So I can't actually read it in full right now, but the most important parts have been posted to Twitter, screenshots of them. So here we see, wearing nothing but a diaper, Mr. Bakr said. He was brought to a separate room to be questioned. The interrogators accused him of Hamas membership and showed him photographs of militants to see if he could identify them. They also asked him about the whereabouts of hostages as well as a senior Hamas leader who lived near Mr. Bakr's family home. When Mr. Bakr denied any connection to the group or knowledge of the pictured men, he was beaten repeatedly, he said. Mr. Al-Hamlawi, the senior nurse, said a female officer had ordered two soldiers to lift him up and press his rectum against the metal stick that was fixed to the ground. Mr. Al-Hamlawi said the stick penetrated his rectum for more than 5 seconds, causing him to bleed and leaving him with unbearable pain. So these are, by the way, not even people who could even remotely be accused of terrorism, just random people who have since been...
Yeah, no, sodomy with knives and blades and metal pipes are standard forms of torture within extrajudicial United States prisons, you know? In a lot of ways, Israel is sort of like the love child of Britain and America. And like father like son, it's carrying out Guantanamo-style Abu Ghraib-type rape torture on its prisoners. And so, yeah, this is not unique to the state of Israel. This sort of shit has been revealed to have happened in Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib. I mean, it happened to Gaddafi. Like, he got sodomized with a knife and murdered by UN assassins. Like, this is something they do. This is something that, like, actually, like, that they do, which is incredibly fucked up.
Released. One of them even being a nurse from a hospital who was detained without charge and brought to a fucking concentration camp and then anally raped with a metal rod. For all of the completely unproven bullshit that Israel has been spamming everywhere about supposed Hamas mass rape, isn't it weird how that, of course, like everything that Israel said, has turned out to be nothing but projection? They are the ones engaging in mass rape here. Mass anal rape. It gets worse, though. Next paragraph. A leaked draft of the UNRWA report detailed an interview that gave a similar account. It cited a 41-year-old detainee who said that interrogators made
Shout out to Bad Empanada for digging up this gem.
me sit on something like a hot metal stick, and it felt like fire. And also said that another detainee died after they put
So they shoved a molten metal rod up his ass.
the electric stick up his anus. That is an account from a witness. No, someone who can't be framed as a terrorist because they've since been released, clearly stating they literally witnessed someone being anal raped to death with an electric stick. Are there any words for this? Mr. Al-Hamlawi recalled being forced to sit in a chair wide of electricity. He said he was shocked so often that after initially urinating uncontrollably, he then stopped urinating for several days. Mr. Al-Hamlawi said he, too, had been forced to wear nothing but a diaper to stop him from soiling the floor. Ibrahim Shaheen, a truck driver detained in early December for nearly 3 months, said he was shocked roughly half a dozen times while sitting in a chair. Officers accused him of concealing information about the location of dead hostages. Literally, Israel is systematically raping random Gazans anally, in some cases to death, and also torturing them with electricity. This is what Israel is. This is what the Israeli state is. They are so much worse than what they accuse others of being. And make no mistake, it's not just Netanyahu, it's not just the government. This is what Israeli society is, and this is why it has to be dismantled.
Yeah, so very good find on Bad Empanada's part. I really wish I could find the article on my own time, because I actually wanted to dig it up. The problem is that, one, I couldn't find it upon initial Google foo, and two, when I did find it, it was paywalled. So I just decided to pull up Bad Empanada. Shout out to him for digging this up. So yeah, that's what's going on in concentration camps. This is basically the Israeli Guantanamo Bay, you know? And this is the same country that accused the Hamas of mass rape and so on during October 7th, of beheading dozens of... Isn't it funny how the country that accuses Hamas of murdering children, one, that allegation turned out to be total bullshit, and two, are guilty of massacring tens of thousands of children. Isn't that funny? Isn't that ironic? And they aren't just massacring children. Israeli settlers are massacring starving Gazans. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Flower Massacre, but there are these massacres that are taking place, being perpetrated by Israeli settlers, by not even the IDF, but literally like militant Israeli settlers who just come in with guns, storm in with weapons, and fucking launch a surprise attack at a disaster relief area for starving Palestinians. UN experts today condemned the violence unleashed by Israeli forces, which killed at least 112 people gathered to collect flour in Gaza last week, as a massacre amid conditions of inevitable starvation and destruction of the local food production system is in the besieged Palestinian enclave. Oh yeah, everyone's starving, by the way. Everybody who lives in Gaza right now, they're all starving. Israel is actively blocking food aid to Gaza. They're actively blocking like essential aid. Like there are dozens of these food trucks that are just getting holed up or stopped and preventing essential disaster relief. They have, since October 7th, leveled virtually every hospital in the northern half of the Gaza Strip, effectively making it impossible for people to practice medicine there. They deliberately destroyed and bulldozed tens of thousands of homes, schools, the deliberate and flagrant destruction of civilian infrastructure, the flagrant use of weapons that are banned by the Geneva Convention, and white phosphorus attacks, like just straight up genocidal war crimes. And douchers are going to single out the October 7th attack during the Nova Festival, when a bunch of settlers were getting together and hosting a rave right on the edge of the Gazan enclave, literally right next to the border wall of Gaza, where like right over that wall you have people fucking starving. You have people who, over that wall, their neighboring villages have all been bulldozed and are in ruins to make way for Israeli settlers who've had their lives destroyed, their family members killed, and these people are now hosting a rave, like right next to the Gaza Strip. Like, I don't think people comprehend exactly how fucked up that is. And people are going to say, oh, well, it was wrong of Hamas to do the attack and kill those civilians. Here's the thing, man. If you come to another country, if you come over from wherever, and you come to live in and settle and colonize a war zone, and you come to steal land from people, and you get shot dead in the crossfire in the middle of this war zone where you are making the conscious, deliberate decision to come over here and steal land from people, you're not a civilian. You are a military target. But what about the children? Like, okay, why are you bringing your children to a war zone? Why are you putting them in harm's way and endangering them by coming and trying to steal land from people? Like, you just expect all the Palestinians to roll over and die? Like, fucking seriously. So, like, the level of insensitivity, the fact that that context is not considered, and the hyper-emphasis, and fucking, don't kid yourself, man. The Israeli settlers are perpetuating a shit ton of violence and hate crimes against Palestine as we speak. Like, the Flower Massacre, like, this was perpetuated by Israeli settlers, and there are similar events like this happening where Israeli settlers are just actively partaking in killing Gazans. Israel has been intentionally starving the Palestinian people in Gaza since the 8th of October. Now it's targeting civilians seeking humanitarian aid and humanitarian convoys, the UN says. Israel must end its campaign of starvation. Israeli troops fired on crowds of Palestinians gathering to collect flour in the southwest of Gaza City on the 29th of February, killing at least 112 and injuring some 760. The attack came after Israel was denied humanitarian aid, The attack came after Israel denied humanitarian aid into Gaza and the northern Gaza for more than a month. So they blocked food aid for over a month. And then they finally let some in, and they literally weaponized it against the Palestinian people. Could it get more cynical, like more obviously cynical than that? Could this be any more blatantly genocidal than that? Or the fact that settlements, they're already getting ready to bring in Israeli settlers to build settlements in northern Gaza. Yeah, like, they're not talking about that either. But they're getting ready to settle Gaza. And, this is another fun little thing that I had with an argument I had with one of my liberal family members. But I was bringing this up, how they're setting up, how there are tent cities being set up in the Egyptian desert. And the Egyptian government is basically preparing to make way for the inevitable waves of Palestinians that get kicked out of the state of Israel. Like, how that's actually, like, pretty much, like, they're anticipating it, so they're building these refugee camps in the northern Egyptian desert. And at the same time, there are plans for new settlements to be built in Gaza. And on top of that, like, on top of all the other horrible shit the state of Israel is doing right now. And they're just like, yeah, because the Egyptians would totally let all these Palestinians just die. They wouldn't give them reasonable accommodations, like, and they're like, oh, but did you know that none of the other Arab countries or countries surrounding the Middle East want the Palestinians? They don't want the Palestinians either. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Fucking, I don't know how necessarily. I actually have a video about that, and we're gonna break that down and review that in a bit. But all this is non sequitur. None of this excuses any of what's happening. And it's just really twisted and demented that there are seriously people out there that deny that this is in fact a genocide. Like, straight up, if you deny that this is a genocide, then there is something broken in you. There's just there's something seriously wrong with you. You know what I mean? On the 26th of January, the International Court of Justice recognized the plausibility of Israel committing genocide and ordered it to allow the delivery of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian aid to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. In January, before the court's decision, an average of 147 trucks entered Gaza every day. Since the ruling was issued, only 57 trucks have entered Gaza between the 9th and 21st of February 2024. Israel is not respecting its international legal obligations, is not complying with the provisional measures of the International Court of Justice, and is committing atrocity crimes, the expert said. Israel systematically denies and restricts the entry of humanitarian aid into convoy by intercepting deliveries and checkpoints, bombing humanitarian convoys, and shooting at civilians seeking humanitarian. So you could have like just UN humanitarian social workers just getting shot and killed on the spot by the Israeli military. 15 children have already died of malnutrition at Kamal Adwan Hospital in Gaza City, and there are fears that the figures could be higher in other hospitals. As the risk of famine continues to rise, all children under 5, 335,000, are at high risk of severe malnutrition, with serious negative impact on their development and their right to health. At least 90% of children under 5 are affected by one or more infectious disease, and 70% have diarrhea. In January, 1 in 6 infants, children under 2 in northern Gaza, were found to be acutely malnourished, leading to a condition known as wasting. We have said before we are alarmed to see an entire population suffering such unprecedented starvation so quickly and completely, the expert said. We've been saying for months that widespread famine is imminent in Gaza. They expressed horror that children were starting to die from malnutrition. When children start dying like this, you know that famine is probably already happening or just around the corner. There is famine, dude. There is famine in Gaza. Like, UN aid is going in and disaster relief is being provided, but it's clearly not enough. Like, the population of Gaza is at a critically severe risk of starvation right now. Like, it is bad. Really, really fucking bad. And that's the flower massacre. Here's another little good one. Let's talk about the attack on the Rafah tent camp. Several countries and global organizations have condemned the Israeli air attack on tents housing displaced people in Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah that killed at least 40 Palestinians. And by the way, this is not a military target. These are all refugees. They're refugees that are taking refuge in this specific area because they've been displaced from their homes. They've been displaced from their homes due to the flagrant bombing of the Israelis. So there's nothing strategic about this. There's nothing Hamas about this. Like, they're not targeting Hamas. This is terror bombing, man. This is straight up a war crime. This is straight up terror bombing, is what it is.
This is what Israeli forces had declared a safe zone, one of the largest camps for displaced people in Rafah, struck by missiles.
Hear that? This was supposed to be a safe zone, a place where people could actually take refuge.
In an attack by Israeli forces, killing dozens of people and injuring many more. Fires quickly spread through the cloth tents, and families sheltering there had little protection.
Most of the bodies were charred and burned, while injured people lost limbs and suffered other injuries due to the use of potentially prohibited weapons that caused a massive fire which erupted.
Many of the injured, including young children, were rushed to the Kuwaiti hospital with severe burns. This is the only hospital still functioning in Rafah, but it doesn't.
Oh yeah, that's right. Just a friendly reminder, Israel has actively bombed every fucking hospital to smithereens. There are no hospitals left, save like a handful, but they've destroyed dozens of hospitals, and early on they tried to do that bullshit where they were blaming Hamas for it. Like, I'll never forget that one story. This is the same discussion I was having with this person, and they were telling me that Hamas is harboring terrorists, or they're harboring weapons in hospitals, and like they were harboring weapons in this hospital or arms in this hospital. I'm like, number one, how does that make it okay for Israel to deliberately target and destroy all their hospitals? And number two, even if they were, who cares? They have every right to engage in armed resistance against a military force that is trying to ethnically cleanse them. I don't care how right-wing or theocratic Hamas is. Like, I don't care. Like, even if they are guilty of some heinous shit, they probably are. But I don't even care if they're guilty of terrorism or war crimes. They are completely within their right to resist the state of Israel.
Have the resources to.
Palestinians are completely within their right to take up arms in active rebellion. The only reason Israel is even winning this, quote unquote, winning this war, the only reason that, like, they're not getting their asses kicked is because they have overwhelming superiority. That's the thing with a lot of Western militaries. In most of the wars we've won, where we cause massive collateral damage and kill a shit ton of innocent people, have been wars where we have overwhelming superiority. We got drones, airplanes, we've got state-of-the-art weapon systems, defense systems, and they've got like makeshift weapons that they crafted in their basement. Like they have, like I'm just telling you right now, if Palestine had even 30% of the military might, like the superiority that Israel has, if they even had like a fraction of what Israel has, even if we're talking like out of date 1970s, 1980s, like tanks and planes, the state of Israel would be getting their asses handed to them right now. They would not be winning this war, like straight up. They would not be winning this war at all. Like, and this shit could have been stopped much sooner. And that's really it, man. It's just very, very messed up.
Care for all the injured.
They burned people. They burned them. They burned an entire block in Tal al-Sultan. What else do you want me to say? I cannot say anything. Missiles came crashing down on an entire block and people were burned. Go and see what happened to people.
The attack comes after the International Court of Justice ruling on Friday, ordering Israel to stop its assault on Rafah, where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are sheltering.
This horrifying massacre sends a clear message from the Israeli occupation and the U.S. administration to the International Criminal Court, and this message says that the Holocaust of Palestinian civilians will continue and massacres against displaced people will continue.
The Israeli military claims the strike targeted Hamas fighters, but admitted civilians were also hurt and says it's reviewing the incident. Hamas issued a statement describing the attack as a massacre and demanding that the ICJ ruling is implemented. But Israel will come under scrutiny to explain why what it calls precision weaponry is killing large number of Palestinians sheltering in tented camps.
This could be evidence of plausible genocide before the International Court of Justice, but could also be evidence for the Office of the Prosecutor in relation to the crimes that the prosecutor has already brought to the attention of the...
This is bourgeois justice on full display. It's very clear-cut who's in the wrong here, and yet it's overwhelmingly Hamas that's going to get prosecuted by the ICJ, while the worst possible thing that happens to Netanyahu and his cronies is they get a slap on the wrist. I'm telling you right now, the ICJ is going to both sides this bullshit. Mark my words. They're already both sidesing it. Hamas is guilty of crimes, etc. Actually, yeah, let's go through that article right now. If I can find it. Because I actually do want to look at the alleged crimes committed by Hamas. I want to see what we're contending with here. But I'm telling you, like, whatever Hamas is guilty of is not even close to a fraction of what Israel is deliberately doing. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, the Israeli population in general is directly, like, complicit in this shit. And if you watch interviews with Israelis, Israelis are some of the most racist people on the planet, dude. I'm gonna pull up another video here in a second. I'll play this afterwards. But these are the people that currently occupy the state of Israel. Actually, I'll just show you now. These are the people who these are the innocent civilian non-military targets that Hamas is killing, by the way.
We're here in Zion Square in Jerusalem, which the government has actually declared to rename Tolerance Square. And we're just going to ask everyday Israelis what they think about the situation. You're American. Where are you from and why did you come here?
I'm from New York, and I came here with my family when I was younger to make Aliyah, because it was always my parents' dream to come to Israel because we're religious.
So, are you American?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Why? When did you move here and why?
I moved here 11 years ago.
My family moved here because this is the country of the Jewish people and the future of the Jewish people, and we want to be here.
How old are you guys?
18.
We're 18 years old. Now we're here in Israel taking a leadership course, and we're going to the army for a few months to see how life's here. And then we hope to bring back some of this knowledge to our youth movements.
So you're like an internship with the army?
It's about 2 months, and they show you everything about the army.
Israel is a great place. It's a nice place. You should come and visit. I love Israel, and I feel safe here.
All that misconceptions are not true. Like, there's not people with knives every day, and there's not I don't know, people exploding.
Palestinians?
Yeah. No, but
you're
pretty much the life here is really good.
Israel for all around the world. We can see it. They think they all have to be Islam. If you're not Islam, they will kill you.
A lot of Americans don't really understand what Israel's like. We hear a lot of things in the news. A lot of people are sympathizing with the Palestinian plight. Can you talk about what it's like to kind of live in this situation?
First of all, it's very hard. I'm in an organization. It's called Lahava.
So he's politically active.
It's against the Jews shouldn't marry Arabs.
Did you say the organization did what again?
Dedicated to making sure Jews don't marry Arabs. These are the people, by the way. These are the innocent civilian targets, by the way. Just a heads up.
The organization is the thing of it is that Jews shouldn't marry Arabs.
Shouldn't marry Arabs. Why do you?
The Arab, may their name and memory be obliterated. Do you fucking hear this shit? She's saying that. Arabs, may their name and memory be obliterated.
אוקיי, בסדר בעברית? פשוט מאוד, צריך להיכנס לשטחים, וכל מחבל שעושה פיגוע צריך להרוג אותו, צריך להרוג את
We have to kill the terrorists and then they'd be afraid to cause us any more trouble.
המחבלים, ואז הם יפחדו ולא יעשו לנו בעיות, והכל יהיה בסדר. הם יהיו בכפרים שלהם, אנחנו נחיה פה, לא צריך להיות ביחד, והכל בסדר.
I think also that every Arab that doing a terrorism attack, we have to kill him, and not because he's an Arab, because he's a terrorist. I think he should also kick out the family, because it all begins with chinuch. How you say
It's so crazy how the concept of like self-defense and autonomy and like the ownership of like your home and like self-preservation is so foreign and alien to these people. Like, it's so crazy. Like, so let me get this straight. You come over here, you steal their land, jam them in the world's largest concentration camp, that is Gaza. You deny them food, water, electricity. You slowly but surely encroach on their territory and take more and more and more from them, kick them out from their homes, kill their family members, and then settle in that stolen land. And so when some of these people want retribution for what's happened to them, and they start fighting back, basically this is what I'm talking about. Like, if the situation were reversed, they're like, oh, they're conquering us, they're taking from us. Like, they would not think like this at all if the situation was reversed. These people have zero self-awareness. These are not good people. These are not good people at all. Like, I'm about to show you guys yet another interview in a second, but like, just the concept of self-preservation. They basically expect the Palestinians to roll over and die. They expect them just to leave, let them take their land, roll in the mud and die, roll over and die. Give up your lives just as easily as we expect you to give up your land, just so we can come and settle. Sorry, Palestinians, you're just going to have to die for my convenience, fuck you.
Education. Whatever they teach the kids does, it's families.
I think that
Why don't they just turn it into a liberal paradise? Why don't they just why don't they embrace liberal values and turn it into a liberal paradise? I don't know, it's kind of hard to fucking do that when you're constantly terrorizing them, brother, and also propping up and enabling their own right wing.
need to
How do you say kick out the terrorists? I think we've seen enough from Abby Martin. I've got another clip for you guys. Share this tab instead. So we got this guy here.
Israel is one of the most racist countries in the world. While you'll never hear anyone in the mainstream media say this, this is actually one of the most important things you need to understand if you want to know what's happening right now.
See that?
Things you need to understand if you want to know what's happening right now. From its inception, the whole idea of Israel as a country was based on racism. Israel was
Yeah, so these are the people we're dealing with. I got more for you though. Again, these are the fucking people. These are the. This is your average attendee at the Nova Music Rave, right? This is what your average attendee at the Nova Music Rave looks like. Again, these are people who have made the conscious, deliberate decision to come over to this country, to come over to Israel, to settle and colonize land that is not theirs, and are actively racist and bigoted as fuck towards the native people that they seek to drive out and they seek to get rid of.
Insulting the Prophet Muhammad, desecrating mosques, spitting on Christians, mocking and celebrating the murder of Palestinians, committing violent hate crimes against Palestinians, watching Gaza get carpet bombed from a cliffside for entertainment. But don't just go off these anecdotes. Let's look at some of the polls. One poll found that 2/3 of Israeli teens believe Arabs to be less intelligent, uncultured, and violent. It also found that 50% of Israelis wouldn't live in the same building as Arabs, wouldn't befriend Arabs, wouldn't let their children befriend Arabs, and wouldn't let Arabs into
50% in this poll. I don't know the sample size of these polls, but the fact that these are sweeping majorities should be the testament of exactly what I'm talking about. They're settlers, they're conquerors. They have not come here to coexist. They have come here for conquest. These are conquerors. These are oppressors. These are people that are making an active and deliberate push to wipe out Palestine. These are the quote-unquote innocent civilians that were killed at that Nova rave.
Their homes. Another poll found that 60% of Israeli Jews want segregation from Arabs. Another poll found that half of Israeli Jews agree with the statement, most Jews are better than most non-Jews because they were born Jews. The poll also found that 88% of Israeli Jews would be disturbed if their son befriended an Arab girl, and 90% would be disturbed if their daughter befriended an Arab boy. This poll found that about half of Israeli high schoolers don't think Arabs should have the right to vote. Another poll showed that almost half of Israeli Jews don't want Arabs teaching their kids. Not only are these views widely held in Israeli society, they're also marries a Palestinian or some
Knesset passes law barring
someone from several other regional Arab states. That person isn't allowed to move in with said Israeli. This law was passed in 2003, constitutional status, which says the right to exercise national self-determination, i.e. have rights, is the exclusive right of Jews, no one else. There's also the Nakba law, which makes it illegal to acknowledge the Nakba, the expulsions of Palestinians that were needed to found Israel.
Yeah, so a little Holocaust denial while we're at it.
This would be like passing a law to make it illegal to talk about indigenous genocide or slavery in America. There's also the Admissions Committee law, which basically allows towns to operate panels that deny applications for entry based on socio-cultural compatibility, which essentially just legalizes racist housing discrimination. In Israel, advocating genocide of Palestinians doesn't hurt your chances of holding a high position in government. And in fact, in many cases, it helps. In 2014, Israeli lawmaker Ayelet Shaked wrote an unhinged rant on Facebook, calling all Palestinians enemy combatants and saying their mothers should be killed for giving birth to, quote, little snakes. The next year, she was appointed Minister of Justice.
This lady was appointed their Minister of Justice
by Benjamin Netanyahu. Itamar Ben-Gvir, a lifelong admirer of Meir Kahane, an Arab exterminationist, a man who praised a Jewish settler who killed a Palestinian for throwing a rock at him, a man who was famously acquitted after being criminally charged for chanting death to Arabs, is Israel's current Minister of National Security.
I think we've seen enough. I think I'm fucking done. Like, this is just aggravating me. So yeah, I don't know how many times I need to repeat myself, but yeah, again, these are the innocent civilians that Hamas killed on October 7th. These are the people that we're dealing with. An entire country of people that have been brainwashed and indoctrinated into being racist as hell. The state of Israel is the most racist and bigoted country on this planet. This is a country that is even more racist and bigoted than the United States. And that's bad. Like, if you're more racist than America, oh, that's dumbfoundingly incredible to me. And yet this is the nation that people are choosing to go to bat for. This is the nation that people are saying, oh, well, they have just as much right to exist as the Palestinians. Two-state solution. Why? Okay, like, why? Like, why? Like, even if they didn't steal the land, why would you condone the establishment and the maintenance of what is objectively a fascist ethno-state? That's what the state of Israel is. It is a modern-day apartheid fascist ethno-state, hell-bent on the eradication of all of Palestine and the eventual conquest of the neighboring regions. Like, the state of Israel as we know it now is just part of a broader operation, a broader plan to establish greater Israel, in which the state of Israel will then cut into Lebanon, parts of Egypt and Iraq, and actually, I'll just show you guys a map. But this is like some of the OG Zionist colonizers had plans to create this eventually. Like, this is what's on the menu in terms of Greater Israel. Here. You guys see this? This is what was going to be Greater Israel. We have Israel right now. The long-term goals of this project, it extends well beyond Palestine. It's not just going to take Palestine. It's eventually going to cut through Egypt. It's going to cut into Syria, Iraq, and even plans to cut into Saudi. I don't think it'll cut into Saudi Arabia because they're geopolitically aligned. They're all oil butt buddies with the West. But no, but this is like the greater Israeli borders. Like, this is the long-term plans. So don't kid yourself, folks. This is conquest. This is settler colonialism. It is a modern-day Zionist, ethno-nationalist, settler colonial apartheid project. And this is what they eventually want to do. So you're kidding yourselves if you think it's going to stop at Palestine. If you think it's going to stop with Gaza and the West Bank, like let's, God forbid, the state of Israel finishes its ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the West Bank. It's just going to keep going. It's going to march into other territories. It's going to wage war on other neighboring countries, and it's going to start to incorporate even more territory. And if it doesn't it doesn't outright conquer, it is going to try to gain geopolitical, political, economic hegemony over, right? So yeah, I believe I've made my point. I had other clips that I wanted to go through, but this live stream is stretching pretty long now. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move on. Oh, I have one more story I want to show you guys. One more. We're going to talk. The United States government is now facilitating these genocidal massacres. Did you guys know that? Let me bust out the article. I have another article for you guys. I don't know if it's New York Times or... U.S. intelligence helped Israel rescue 4 hostages in Gaza. So this is the article. What they'll tell you is they rescued 4 hostages in Gaza. What they won't tell you was that they killed 200 innocent people in the process. They killed hundreds of innocent people. And I believe they also killed some hostages as well. But yeah, a team of American hostage recovery officials stationed in Israel assisted the Israeli military's effort to rescue 4 captives by providing intelligence and other logistical support. One American official said, speaking without attribution to discuss the sensitive operation. We won't stop working until all the hostages come home and a ceasefire is reached, he added, and it's essential. 2 Israeli intelligence officials said the American military officials in Israel provided some of the intelligence about the hostages rescued Saturday. And again, they're leaving out the part where they massacred hundreds of people in the process. They're explicitly leaving out that part in that article. But I did find a screenshot of a headline that talks about it, if I can possibly find it. Here it is. I think. But yeah, they didn't just rescue those hostages, they killed hundreds of people as well. Here we go. It is believed that 116 hostages were released, Israeli operation, 2 weeks planning, but killed scores of Palestinians in Gaza. Here it is. Here. We're going to go through this article and then we're going to finally move on. But an Israeli operation rescues 4 hostages and kills scores of Palestinians. Here's what we know. At least 274 Palestinians were killed in the operation and hundreds injured, Gazan authorities said, who do not distinguish between civilian and military casualties. While there has been euphoria for the families of the 4 rescued, 8 months after they were kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival, celebrations could be brief. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu remains under intense pressure with his goal of destroying Hamas, yada yada. What happened during the raid? Unusually, the IDF opted for a daytime raid in the Nuseirat camp in central Gaza on Saturday, saying that it allowed them a greater element of surprise. Israel forces have been preparing for this rescue for weeks. They underwent intensive training. Hagari said Israeli forces had to enter civilian areas to reach hostages, as this is where Hamas had embedded itself. Some of the special forces were disguised as displaced Palestinians and as members of Hamas military ring. Without the cover of darkness, the IDF ran a greater risk of failing to get in and out of Gaza safely. One officer was shot and killed during the operation, according to Israeli police. Why was the Palestinian toll so high? The hostages were held in civilian buildings, according to the IDF, in the midst of a densely populated camp. Hagari said hostages had been locked in 2 separate apartments, multi-story buildings. And this is a refugee area, by the way. This is one of the quote-unquote safe zones that Israel has delegated to the Palestinians. So this is a place where something like this shouldn't happen, and this sort of colossal, catastrophic fallout and collateral damage should not happen. Like it simply shouldn't. It should not. Like, this is not something that. But instead, they just go in, gun down a shit ton of people, fuck a bunch of people up, and then they get the hostages. That's okay because they rescued the Israeli hostages, right? There were early indications of an ongoing mission when Israel announced ahead of the news on Saturday morning it was operating in Nuseirat. But it had launched a new offensive in the area midweek. Heavy bombardment was reported during the Israeli rescue mission. So let's see what we got. The IDF has disputed the numbers, saying it estimated. Of course, they're going to downplay it. One local Palestinian man named Abu Abdallah told CNN Stringer on the ground that people were struck in their homes at around 5 a.m. in local time. We tried to get ambulances, but no one could enter as it was already a military zone. Dogs were eating people's remains. We pulled out 6 martyrs, all torn up children and women. Although local residents, Nidal Abdo, said he was shopping at Nuseirat Market before a crazy bombardment. It was something we never witnessed. Maybe 150 rockets fell in less than 10 minutes. Graphic video shows many Palestinians, including children, injured with blood on their faces and clothes. Footage from the hospital also shows, you gotta love that, don't you? You've got all these articles talking about this successful rescue mission. Yeah. But they're conveniently like downplaying the massacre part. So yeah, they rescue 4 hostages. I think they actually killed several hostages in the raid, but don't quote me on that. I don't actually know if they did or not, but I think I remember reading on Lefty Poll, they were talking about how several hostages were accidentally killed during the raid. And yet another point made by genocide apologists is they'll say that, that Hamas is using Palestinians as human shields, and really it's Hamas is to blame, really. Hamas is to blame for Israel indiscriminately murdering people like this. Killing civilians, even if some of those civilians are part of Hamas, even if they're military targets, killing civilians is still a war crime. And this is the last article I'm actually going to go through. This is another one I'm going to send to you guys. 20 journalists died by Israeli military fire in 22 years. No one has been held accountable. More have been killed than that. There have been fucking dozens of IDF killings of journalists, and I'll make sure to link this below. I'm not going to go through this article, but I just wanted to show you guys before we move on how utterly fucked this situation is. Let me see. That's CPJ. Yeah, that's it. And then U.S. deep state is now actively aiding the Zionist entity. U.S.-backed commission accuses Israel of crimes against humanity. No. Touching up. But yeah, I'll make sure to include all of this down in the description when the stream's over. But yeah. So, fuck, we didn't even get through everything I wanted to get through. That's the crazy part. I mean, I guess I could expose AOC. I mean, I figure this is something worth bringing up. Definitely something worth figuring up. Let's do this. The callousness. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So there were these protests. Hundreds of people were protesting the Nova night raid. And I believe I even have an article about it. Why we protested Nova. So there were hundreds of protesters in New York in defiance of the New York Police Department's growing brutality against protesters targeting the Palestinian Muslim women and their pathetic attempts to defame organizers. Within our lifetime strongly reiterates our call for sustained action against any institution facilitating or justifying the genocide of Palestinian people, including the Nova exhibition, for as long as it is in New York and in any city for the travel to the next. So yeah, you had a bunch of protesters. The Zionist entity justified Nusrat massacre of nearly 300 displaced Palestinians by characterizing it as a rescue operation for 4 hostages taken from the Nova Music Festival. The music festival was a rave next to a concentration camp, held 3 miles away from the wall separating Gaza from the rest of Palestine. The wall was erected to isolate Gaza from the outside world in 2005 and has kept some 2 million Palestinians from returning to their ancestral villages for nearly 2 decades. The Israeli occupation forces launches missiles into the strip regularly, but bans the import of construction equipment that could rebuild dilapidated homes. Long before October, they had restricted food and medicine from being transported across the wall, leaving many Palestinians malnourished and ill. The Nova exhibition serves only one purpose: to make this level of colonial violence acceptable to the U.S. public. Manufactured consent has been pushed forth in a myriad of ways since October. Photos of cards written by patrons at the end of the Nova exhibition calling for the genocide of Palestinians. Our unity will let you heal. Our unity will let you heal. The Gazans are all Amalek. They should be wiped off the face of the earth. I am struck by the hope and beauty of the will to survive. I'm filled with the shame and embarrassment that Muslim people are our cousins. I can't comprehend on Allah. Oh, okay, so we got ourselves a little Eichmann over here. We got one of the good Arabs, one of the good ones. We got ourselves a good Muslim right here. This traveling apartheid apologia serves the same goal as the false claim, the weaponization of sexual assault, and other projections from the Zionist entity. Oh, yeah. Honestly, I'm gonna be honest, guys. I don't even think it's true. I don't even think it's true that Israel or that Hamas has raped thousands of or hundreds of Palestinian women or whatever. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if that's bullshit too. But anyways, this is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's response to the protests, protesting this Nova. And remember those cards I just showed you guys. These are the people, again, these are the people that are showing up to the rave. These are the people that condone and support it. These are the Israelis. These are the people, the quote-unquote innocent people that we're talking about here. The callousness, dehumanization, and targeting of Jews on display last night's protest outside Nova Festival exhibit was atrocious anti-Semitism. Plain and simple. Anti-Semitism has no place in our city, nor in any broader movement that, so protesting genocide is anti-Semitism. Gotcha. But remember, this is the cunt that's telling you guys that you need to vote for her. You need new elections coming up. Vote her. You know what I mean? This is the fucking cunt that is basically saying she supports Palestine. People like this are dangerous, man. At least with like fascists, you know who your enemy is. But people like AOC poison the discourse like to such a heavy degree, you know? And it's crazy that this is what passes for left wing in our country. I didn't know being anti-genocide, I didn't know you could be pro-genocide and be a leftist at the same time. Like, I'm not saying she's explicitly, openly pro-genocide, but she's an apologist for it. She's basically running interference for a fascist ethno-state right now. There was no... I love this. I love how AOC gets fucking flamed. There was no dehumanization and targeting of Jews. There's another link we'll keep. You conflate being Jewish with a genocidal rape theater, actually racist atrocity propaganda spectacle that was protested. That makes you the vile, depraved, genocidal freak, as you have always been. In the middle of the Gazan genocide, AOE has signed a statement affirming Israel's right to self-defense and supporting funding for an Iron Dome. No other member of the squad signed it, but AOC did because she's a depraved, genocidal scumbag careerist. Thank you. We know you're not allowed to do it, but it's still worth noting you have nothing to say about the open calls for the genocide of Palestinians and Muslims posted inside the exhibit. You're always quick to condemn anti-Zionists, though. Yeah, again, these are the people we're dealing with. But I just love it. I love how she's just getting flamed. Occasional cortex, sit down. You are a gargantuan imbecile. The protesters are part of the same extremist Nah, you're a dumbass. Oh, Andy No. Andy No. Another fascist. Another fascist and nation traitor, too. This guy, fucking, his parents were on the side of North Vietnam during the Vietnamese War. They were on the side of Ngo Dinh Diem, or whatever the dictator's name was, in I think it was in North or South Vietnam, that was sponsored by the US government. So yeah, we have ourselves a literal nation traitor here. A literal nation traitor. And Andy Ngo fucking regularly shows up to anti-fascist protests to run interference for fascists. He's basically pro-fascism. Did APEC write this post for you? You visited their encampments and hugged them. You said you admired them. They should continue what they're doing. Now you're surprised at the dehumanization and depravity on display from the very people you boosted only a few weeks ago. Pick a side, stop playing both. Yeah. You're defending, once again, explicit genocide propaganda. You need to separate Zionism from Judaism. Otherwise, you are contributing to real anti-Semitism. Yeah, exactly. And I just want to be clear, guys. I, for one, am not opposed to the Jewish people having, like, a nation state to call their own, all right? I'm not opposed to. I'm not opposed to them going to live and occupy the Holy Land. They want to live in Jerusalem. They want to live in Palestine. By all means, you know? If they want to live and coexist with the Palestinians, by all means, you know? They can move there. They can buy land legally. They can go live there, and then they can go about their regular daily lives. But it's not enough for them to, you know, go and live over there. They have to steal land from Palestine. They have to drive them out. They have to commit violent atrocities and crimes against humanity and conquest. So, yeah, you know, dude, whatever. I'm going to read some comments. And go up. If Hamas killed 270 civilians, the West would call it a second October 7th and use it as just. Oh, fuck yeah, dude. They would absolutely. They would use. If Hamas killed like 200 Israeli settlers in some counterattack, you would bet your sweet ass that this would be used as provocation basically to flatten all of Gaza and basically do actual, like, you know, basically speedrun genocide. They would be actively killing people much faster, much more indiscriminately. The only reason they're doing it as slowly as they are is so they can try to justify to the international community why they're having such massive collateral fucking damage in their attacks against Hamas. They killed 3 hostages waving white flags. Thank you. Thank you. I rest my case. Mainstream media is leaving out that detail. I knew for a fact they killed some of the hostages. You call that a successful rescue mission? Okay, so let me get this straight. You rescue 4 hostages, kill 3 of them by accident, and then murder hundreds of people, innocent bystanders in the process needlessly. How is this a fucking successful rescue operation again? Just saying. Zionists downplaying like always. And the media, it's crazy how I could go through all those articles, and I for the life of me could not find that detail earlier. Like when I was doing research for this stream, I for the life of me could not find that detail. I learned that from Lefty Poll. But now that I have like some confirmation, if you can provide me with a primary documentation or a source, provide me with evidence, please. Please post that down in the description, or not description, but the chat, and I'll write that down and I'll feature that in the description of this live stream. Time for me, a Christian, to go on a crusade. Expose AOC. I always hate it when people say Gazans rather than Palestinians. I fucking hate that. It's not. If it's to get rid of Haradic Zionists, I advocate crusade. Yeah, we do need a crusade. We need a crusade against the nation of Zion, the Zionist entity. Centrist cowardice knows no bounds. No, it doesn't. And the fucked up part is like, even if I weren't even a communist, this would be a very easy issue to derive the correct conclusions from. Because even when I was like a little kid, like, and I learned what I have about Israel and Palestine from Abby Martin, I immediately could tell, yeah, this is messed up. They're stealing their land. Israel's committing crimes against humanity, I was able to come to the correct conclusions long before I became a communist. I saw what was going on, and I immediately knew what they were doing was fucked up and that Israel was in the wrong. And if 16-year-old, 17-year-old jackass stoner, dumb version of me could figure it out, it's crazy that the so-called experts can't. Ugh. What do we got here? Palestine, I see as God's children. I mean, God willing, they need our help. Yeah, Western Protestants are the most powerful collection of morons who are so easy to despise here in the U.S. It makes it tough not to beat them down. Yeah, like any person here who thinks you're an advocate for Palestine, you think you advocate for Palestine, but you're sitting here trying to justify and run apologetics for these massacres. Let's play a little game. Why don't we go to a protest group, a Palestinian protest group? I bring you to a group of Palestinian protesters, immigrants that live over here, that are orchestrating the protest, and you can tell them what you told me about how the IDF was justified massacring their fellow countrymen, and let's see which one of us gets punched in the mouth. Let's play a little game. Tell you what, I will close my channel forever. If I will close my channel forever and leave the internet forever if they punch me, but they're not going to. Like, let's see which one of us gets punched in the mouth. I'll bring you to this group. I'll bring you to my peeps, the people I know, and you can tell them what you told me, and try to justify and keep sitting here trying to justify your own apologetics, and look at the tiny little stain of blood on the Palestinian shirt compared to the fact that this Israel is covered like from head to toe in like a 1-inch layer thick goo of blood. Let's see which one of us gets punched in the mouth. Sound good? All right. The Pentagon denies. I think it was an Al Jazeera article. Yeah, please post that if you can find it. I'm going to be streaming a little while longer, and I would greatly appreciate that, comrade. What am I going to vote for? I ain't voting for shit. I ain't voting for shit, bitch. Fucking, there aren't any good candidates. Like, I mean, I guess I could turn out for the Greens again if their candidate isn't some like hardcore sock dem reformist. If there's some kind of socialist, I might turn out. But besides that, like, there's not a lot of point in turning out for these elections because it's all first past the post. Like, yeah, I can vote, but it's not going to matter because my district is going to go to winner take all, whoever had the majority, I guess it's a matter of principle at that point, but still, I don't know, I might just stay home this election. Yeah, it's genuinely pathetic that the Catholic Church has become more progressive on many issues. Well, yeah, they have to assimilate. They need to adapt. If they don't assimilate, if they don't adapt, they are going to fade into irrelevancy pretty damn quick. Here. We'll feature these YouTube videos of... Do I have that Facebook? Okay, I do. There we go. I've compiled the list of sources. All I'm waiting on is the source from our good comrade Zomboe. And once I have that, I'll be able to fit that all in the description. Oh, they're going to run the anti-vaxxer, the crystal lady. Nah, I'm just kidding. I like Jill Stein. So where were we? Oh yes, what else did I have on the agenda? Oh yeah, moving beyond, still related, but only semi-related. We're going to talk about, we're going to pull up some news. Apparently Israel's getting ready to go with Hezbollah. So I'm going to pull up the CNN video, and we'll just watch this. The link is too big. Hold on. Oh dear. Oh dear. Could you actually, if you could just post the headline of the article, I could probably dig it up. I could probably just Google foo it, and it'll probably be one of the first search results. Because if it's from Al Jazeera, I'll just write down the full name of the article, and I'll feature it in the description below.
Fears of an expanding conflict in the Middle East after Israel's foreign minister warns Hezbollah it would be destroyed if all-out war breaks out. Israel Katz's comments online follow Hezbollah's release of a purported 9-minute drone video that shows sensitive military locations and civilian areas in Haifa and other Israeli cities. And while tensions percolate along the northern border with Lebanon, there's a brewing diplomatic rift between the Netanyahu government and the White House. We are connecting the dots on this for you with Ben Wiedemann, back with us this hour from Beirut. Paula Hancock's is in Jerusalem, and Lauren Fox is in Washington on Capitol Hill. Let me start with you, Ben. Just describe to us the importance of this purported video shot by drones, Hezbollah says, from Lebanon over Israeli cities, including Haifa, which of course serves as a crucial gateway to the rest of the world and maybe more importantly for Israel. How does Hezbollah manage to fly a drone in such strategic locations? And is this psychological warfare that we're looking at here?
Based. Fuck yeah, based.
Well, Becky, I think the Israelis are also trying to figure out how.
Yo, I don't care for Hezbollah. They're just a paramilitary extension of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But at the very least, they're undermining and fucking with the state of Israel. Like that's always a positive development.
How it is that Hezbollah was able to fly those drones over some very sensitive military positions, military industries, the port where we see huge oil storage facilities. They got it all. Now, for one thing, what we've been seeing from almost the beginning of the back and forth skirmishes between Hezbollah and Israel is that Hezbollah has been targeting Israeli surveillance and observation equipment all along the border. The Israelis, in fact, brought in cranes to replace the destroyed surveillance equipment, and Hezbollah took those out as well. So clearly there are holes in their ability to see what enters Israeli airspace, but above and beyond that, clearly Hezbollah has the technical capabilities to collect this sort of sensitive information well inside Israeli territory. It's about 30 kilometers from
Turtle Island to Gaza. I thought it was an Al Jazeera article, because I got it pulled up right here. I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but if it is, I'll feature it in the description. But is this like a 2020 shortlisted? I mean, if you, I'm specifically looking for the article that mentioned how multiple hostages were murdered by the IDF with the help of the CIA. That was specifically what I was looking for, because in no media outlet are they mentioning that detail. They're like straight up omitting. Some of them are omitting the massacre, but it's too obvious to know. It's too obvious to hide, so a lot of them mention it, and they just try to downplay the numbers. But I'm specifically looking for that detail. If you can provide me a primary source for that, we would be we would be very golden. But I'll go ahead and feature the book. Oh, you found the image source here. Oh, okay. What do we got here? Turtle Island to Gaza. I mean, I'll feature the book because I'm sure it's good. But what happened to that one ship that was going to sail to Gaza to help the Palestinians? It got blockaded by Joseph Biden. It's too long. Hold on. Swift capitalism is declining. Nope, I just said that. I found the image source here. Registered green. What happened to that one ship? I don't know. Oh, I just read that. Sorry. I'm voting Jill Stein simply for the hope of breaking the duopoly of the Green Party. U.S. has the most ballot access. There are socialists in the Green. Yeah, so that's the thing. Until our electoral system is systematically reformed, socialists aren't really going to have a meaningful chance of getting elected to power and in positions of authority, I'm afraid. Because of our current first past the post system, it biases the election result in the favor of one or the other party, and it actively discourages people from literally doing democracy. It's actually really fucked up, but until that is addressed, I'm afraid socialist parties don't really have much of a meaningful chance of getting elected. That being said, I think grassroots organizing for sweeping electoral reform and democratic reform would definitely pave the way for socialists down the line. And this is what I mean by like putting the cart before the horse and focusing on specific issues and having organizations centered around accomplishing specific set goals and then consolidating with one another towards something bigger over time. All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and go back to this.
From the nearest point on the Lebanese-Israeli border to Haifa. Was it a propaganda video? Well, actually, if you looked at the text in the video, there wasn't anything about attacks. It was just very sort of factual, explaining what this location is, what it served, what you're seeing. And it really is a message to the Israelis that, you know, don't mess with us. We not only have the ability to collect intelligence deep inside your territory on very sensitive sites, but along with that probably comes other capabilities that we've seen slowly unveiled in the last few weeks. For instance, Hezbollah in the last few months has been able to shoot down 3 Hermes 900 Israeli drones, very sophisticated drones that can fly as high as 30,000 feet. They took those out with anti-aircraft missiles. 2 weeks ago, they were able to strike, according to Hezbollah, but the would would also seem to confirm that, an Israeli Iron Dome battery. The Iron Dome is really the backbone of Israel's missile defense system. So even though Israeli officials like the foreign minister are talking about destroying Hezbollah is showing.
Tell you what, man. Hezbollah, they are definitely doing the Lord's work by virtue of just being a thorn. By virtue of being a thorn in the side of the IDF, by virtue of being the sand in the crack of the IDF's ass, they are doing a positive thing for the world. Not saying I like Hezbollah, but it brings me great pleasure to know when the state of Israel is getting its teeth kicked in for any reason. So I'm gonna read an article about this conflict, actually. So unable to back down, I'll go ahead and feature this in the list of sources, but unable to back down, Israel and Hezbollah move closer to all-out war. Full-scale war between Israel and Hezbollah would be a catastrophe, the UN Secretary General says. But to David Kamari, who lives under near daily fire on the Israeli left side of the border, it would be a solution. Last month, a Hezbollah rocket fired in Lebanon landed in his front garden in the border of Kiryat Shmona, cracking his house in several places and filling it with rubble. He points out the gaping holes where shrapnel sliced through the walls, missing him by inches, not missing him by enough, and then to the hills above us, where Hezbollah-controlled territory begins. Every day, every night, bombs. It's a problem, he said, and I was born here. If you live here one night, you go crazy. David is still living in his rubble-filled house, pieces with shrapnel entangled with the remains of his television set. Outside of his blackened relic of his car, burned by the fire that swept through his front yard after the rocket hit. David is one of the few who stayed. I lived here 71 years. I won't go. I was in the army. I'm not afraid. His solution, war with Hezbollah. Okay, cool. So Hezbollah is just launching missile attacks in the other side of Israel, periodic strikes. Nothing wrong with that. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that. The only problem with this is that they currently aren't having enough success, but by virtue of shooting down drones, harassing some settlers, I'm just saying it's not the worst outcome. Israel has been striking back hard against Hezbollah, killing senior commanders and hitting targets further inside Lebanon. Hezbollah has sent larger volleys of drones and missiles across the border this month, and threats on both sides have increased. Tough talk has been long part of the mutual strategy of deterrence, with both sides seen as wary of all-out war. But the tit-for-tat conflict grinds on, and more than 60,000 Israelis remain evacuated from their homes in the north. There are signs that both... Oh, no. Oh, God. You've been driven from your homes? People are threatening you with violence? You feel as though your safety and personal autonomy and right to live and self-determination has been breached? Oh my God! Imagine that! Fucking douchers. But yeah, so the mayor, Shimona, shows me the site where the rocket hit, yada yada, etc., etc. I don't think there's any country in the world that would accept daily fire against its citizens, etc., etc. And sitting here like lambs to slaughter. Bro, you fucking get the fuck over yourself. You guys are some of the most pampered people in the region. Like, Israeli settlers, Israel is a fucking first world country, like with living standards comparable to that of like Scandinavia. These people are babied. These people have it on easy mode, like straight up. Like they have billions of dollars worth of Western subsidies pumped into them constantly. They've got state-of-the-art healthcare, technology. They're very wealthy. Like, the state of Israel is a nice place. It was actually a nice place to live, all in all. And the war and the conflict that's going on in the wake is a direct consequence of its actions and its existence. And as long as the state of Israel continues to exist, there will continue to be resistance until the state of Israel is finally abolished. That's the ultimate goal here. And they will be abolished, mark my words. Like, the state of Israel is not going to be around that much longer. Like, I'm telling you right now, what's going on right now is the beginning of the end. And I can see the future, comrades. I can see the future, and the state of Israel isn't there. I think within the next couple of decades, the project is going to either get disbanded or reformed, and the government's going to get reconstituted. And but the state of Israel as it exists now, I do not see it existing for that much longer. The problem is it keeps fucking with its neighbors. It keeps sowing disarray and conflict, and it just, with the amount of mounting political pressure from all around the globe, the amount of protesting, and you've got these attacks. Like, I'm just saying, man, I think the state of Israel is doomed to fail. I'm pretty sure it's doomed to fail, and we should be glad it's going to fail. Found the image source here. I'm still looking for the source from Turtle to Gaza. Yeah, never mind. I give up. All right, so I still hope here in Malaysia we'll have a socialist in parliament. Keep fighting for it, and you eventually might. It's telling that the fascists who drafted Project 2025 docs consider centrists the radical left, well, yeah, they're the left respective to them. It's all relative. What is left? What is right? These are relativistic terms. And so, to a bunch of socially backwards Neanderthals, it would certainly seem as though the Democrats are the extreme left, especially when these are people that have been brainwashed into thinking that socialism is hell on earth. And now you've got Democrats, a few Democratic senators that positively identify with the term, like AOC, the Squad, and Bernie Sanders. So they're like, this is too much to stand. People having health care, people having jobs and health care and decent quality life, our economy not being so top heavy. Fuck that. Those aren't real issues. We're concerned about real shit, like transgender people in sports, yeah, or transgender people in school. These are the real issues we should be concerning ourselves with. People's sexual orientation and gender identity. That's clearly the number one thing, the number one agenda that should be on our minds. Not any actual issues that pertain to the average person's quality of life. Not peace. Nothing that actually makes sense. Just culture war bullshit, you know? Going back to the oil thing, we could figure it out if we just took a massive X-ray scan of Earth. But that satellite would need to be, hell yeah, it would. Bro, you're talking about world governments coming together and collaborating to build a satellite the size of the Eiffel Tower. That shit would have to be built in space. Like, that's not something you could just build on Earth and launch into space. You would literally have to either send all the parts up into space to assemble it, or you would have to create a refinery on the moon, because there are resources on the moon, and use a highly sophisticated automated manufacturing process, launch all the parts, because the escape velocity of the moon is only like 10% of Earth. So getting this giant satellite into space would not be... You could not only build it much bigger than you could on Earth, you could send it much more cheaply and cost effectively as well. So things like that you mentioned is technology that's only going to be available under world communism, I believe, because we're only going to get highly sophisticated space tech like that if humanity starts working together. All right, what do we got? Sucks that Israel does not understand that the attacks are a result of their own Yeah, it's called having no self-awareness, as right-wingers generally don't. Every magatard I've encountered locally still thinks Reagan wasn't an idiot. Reagan wasn't an idiot, he was just a psychopath. Just delusional, out-of-touch psychopath. You know what I mean? And I mean, he was a true believer. Don't kid yourself. He was a true believer in neoliberalism and capitalism abroad. We should get stuff to the moon, but in the name of the proletariat. Otherwise, it will look more like an expansive Star Trek. Again, you're talking about epic projects of larger scale and proportion than anything that's ever been conducted in human history, requiring the active and deliberate collaboration of governments everywhere. Like, literally everyone pulling their resources together to make that happen. And, like, that's just not going to happen anytime soon. Unfortunately, I think we're going to hit a huge wall when it comes to scientific innovation. We already kind of have. I mean, because there's a lot of technology that has existed for a while that would solve many problems that just isn't implemented because it's not profitable, or because it's just too expensive and doesn't have any immediate payoff. Yeah, intergalactic SSR. Why did Nicaragua matter so much to the US during Reagan? Because they were rabid anti-communists that wanted to stop the spread of socialism. That's why. So they sold crack cocaine to black and brown minorities and neighborhoods across America to raise the proceeds necessary to fund the Contras and arm the Mujahideen, I believe. I like to use the term planetary cooperative commonwealth, which is communism realized. Guys, these are fun things to talk about. I enjoy talking about them, but unfortunately, we are decades out from being anywhere near that. Like, I mean, we can get into this conversation if you'd like, because it's a fun conversation, but it's unfortunately not a conversation that matters as much as the conversation about how we're even going to, like, get the movement back off the floor in the first place, because as it stands now, world socialism is all but dead. If you go to any political climate anywhere, you're not going to find any relevant communists participating in the discourse, you know? I mean, you'll find leftists, but like they're few and far between. There's not a lot of people know about them, and a lot of it is just like independent media. It's not anybody that's actually engaging in revolutionary activity. It's just some asshole, some fuckhead on the internet voicing his opinion. That's pretty much all it is at this stage. Centuries, yep. Forgive me. I was being optimistic. What do we got here? I've encountered boomers so stupid, one of them literally said, and I quote, Reagan knocked down the wall, meaning the Berlin Wall. Yeah, that is pretty stupid, I guess. Culture war is nonsense. It let poisoned boomer morons that respond to that. Like, cancel culture does not actually exist. Don't kid yourself. If you're wealthy and influential, I mean, look at what happened with Donald Trump. You know, grab her by the pussygate. When Trump was running for president back in 2016, and this is while he was running against Hillary Clinton, by the way, an audio leak. There was an audio leak of him bragging to his buddies about successfully getting away with sexually assaulting women. He's like, sometimes I just kiss women, sometimes I just grab her by the pussy, Mr. Pussy Grabber. That was released right before the general election, and he still got elected anyways. If that doesn't prove cancel culture doesn't exist, I don't know what does. Oh, wow, someone's getting flamed online. Like people are flaming you online and holding you accountable for the objectively horrible stuff that you say publicly. Oh, cancel culture. Oh. It's so funny. X. Fuck that. I'm not calling it X. Twitter's stock has plummeted. Like, the value of Twitter has fallen through the floor in like the last 6 months that it's been owned by Elon Musk. Elon Musk has systematically shit the bed when it comes to the way that he currently manages Twitter. It is now a cesspit hive of Nazis and nut jobs and like conspiracy cranks. But where's the hockey stick graph? Oh, Twitter's share price as of 9:30 a.m. 70%. Twitter's stock falls further as doubts swirl over Musk's takeover. That's fucking hilarious. Check this out. It was up here. Boom. Line go down. Yeah. So, very entertaining to me. Twitter stock prices. Well, this isn't the right chart, but ever since Musk has bought Twitter, their stock prices has just fallen through the floor. And you can see it. Now they have to spam more adverts than ever before. It used to be like once every 10 posts you would see an advert. Now you see it's like every other post there's an advert. You've got really, really weird commercials, like stuff that is obviously catered to conspiracy cranks and like far-right lunatics, like male enhancement pills, legal steroids, incel guru, pickup art products, water filters, tinfoil hats, like the kind of stuff that's catered specifically to right-wing cranks. That's like become more and more prominent as a type of advertisement, and that's like every other, because they've lost so much ad revenue because so many advertisers have pulled out of Twitter, and there's like been such a loss of confidence. It's actually hilarious. It actually is hilarious. Here it is. This is where he bought it at. He bought it at 45 billion. It peaked at 50 billion. Since then, it has plummeted to, it's literally fallen almost in half, from like 50 billion to like 30 billion within a matter of about 6 months. That is hilarious. I just wanted to throw that out there because I thought it was funny. Wow, there's a bunch of new comments. Don't forget Tara Reid, the woman Biden sexually assaulted, and she was just dragged through the mud by the media and smeared. It's a joke to act like Trump is the only piece of shit rapist. Yeah, we've got, on one hand, it's just like I described back in 2020. It's shaping up to be a spectacular battle royale. On one hand, you have the demented pedophile, and on the other hand, you have the orange demented pedophile. Both of them are rapists, both of them are senile, neither of them have any business trying to run a country, and frankly, you didn't hear this from me, but personally, I don't think either of them even deserve to be alive, but that's a different point. Yeah, no, people left that out. Media didn't harp up on it, and this is why it pisses me off. I said this a few hours ago, but this is what pisses me off about liberals just pretending things are just getting better. No, they're not, because you have people calling out this sort of assault on a regular basis, and they either get ignored or they get slandered. Anybody hear about that story about the lady who spilled coffee? There's this old lady who went to a McDonald's. I don't know if you guys have heard this story, but there's this old lady who went to a McDonald's, and something was wrong with their coffee boiler. It was just like super, super hot. Like their boiler in particular was just boiling like ludicrously hot. So she orders a coffee. She enters her car and accidentally spills it. Like it like falls through. It literally falls through her cup and onto her lap and gives her third-degree burns all over her belly, all over her legs and thighs, and on her genitalia. So she gets third-degree burns on like the bottom half of her torso and her legs and genitalia. And she takes McDonald's to court and just asks them, "Can you pay for my medical expenses?" That's all she wanted. All she wanted was the McDonald's Corporation to reimburse her for her medical expenses. They gave her no choice but to sue because they fought her, and they drug this thing through litigations for like years on end, but she inevitably won the case. She inevitably won the suit. And after that happened, McDonald's started pushing for a collective smear gaslight campaign, basically acting like she's a Karen who, got little light burns. She didn't get third-degree burns. And like, she's a Karen trying to sue us. She's just greedy and wants our money, says the giant, soulless, heartless, sleazy corporation that's trying to get out of paying for this woman's hospital bills. So she sues them, makes millions of dollars, and ever since, a bunch of lies have been told about this lady that she just sued McDonald's for the sake of money because she's just a greedy cunt and won. I don't know if you guys have heard that story, but Adam Ruins Everything talked about it some time ago. You just don't understand his 10,000 IQ stonk plays. You're right. It really is making my head spin, bro. I thought the whole point of running a business was to grow it. But here Elon Musk is out here showing us how to crash it into the ground. I already read that. Gen X, I'm 66 years old and I've been a Marxist-Leninist for the past 5 years. I was a De Leonist before that. Oh, that's very cool. Welcome aboard, comrade. I deleted my original comment to censor my anger. Sorry for the dupe comment. I don't know what comment you're referring to. The Magatard comment? I don't care. I've been drifting left since 92, and for a variety of reasons. Let's just say it alienated me from most of my family who have many skeletons. And yeah. The weird thing about becoming left-wing is that you'll have a lot of people. I mean, I'm not saying if you're a liberal, you're necessarily a bad person, but you'll start to notice the massive moral and ethical pitfalls in your peers' ideology, and you'll see their beliefs for what they really are and how fucking horrible it is, the things that they believe. It's just because they've been indoctrinated for so long and they've never been taught how to think, and a lot of it is just ignorance. It's not that they don't understand, it's that they don't want to understand. And so you try to explain these things to them, and a lot of people are just stuck in their ways, set in their ways, and they're too arrogant and stubborn and emotional to get out of their comfort zone and, God forbid, change their mind about something because they don't like the optics or whatever. But yeah, me becoming a communist has definitely alienated me from some of my family members. We definitely aren't as tight as we used to be. I definitely take pause with some of the very gross things I hear them espouse. I'm mainly referring specifically, like being a Democratic partisan is one thing. I mean, and I guess it does come with the territory of being a Zionist apologist, but like, I cannot fucking stand people that do that Zionist apologia. I can't stand it. I just call it out on the spot nowadays. Let's see what we got here. So, Apparently, my grandma lived during the occupied of Japan. Oh, cool. Same thing as a scenified O'Connor ripping up the picture of George Bush on SNL. The coffee machine was set at a temperature above settings. McFault, she never collected a penny. Tort reform was a limit on damages. Oh, I thought she won the suit. That's even more fucked up. I thought she won the suit. There's nothing redeemable about the entirety of the capitalist. Like, yeah, man, when you get to my level, most people are not on my level, and it's our job to elevate people to our level. You know, me and the other 30-something people here. I'm not trying to come off as arrogant or sound arrogant or condescending or nothing, but you have to understand when it comes to political consciousness, there are levels. There are levels to the game, much like there are levels to the martial arts. Because as you guys probably know, I'm a huge UFC nerd. There are levels to the game. Some people are just better fighters than others. Some people are just more politically conscious and better at this stuff than others. Not everybody, unfortunately, not everyone is going to answer the call. You're always going to have people like that just have their heads up their ass, or they just they don't take that much of an interest. So, you know, you can elevate their political consciousness to an extent, but they'll never be at like the level of like a Vladimir Lenin, you know? And I think Lenin's ahead of us. I think Lenin shits all over everybody here. Lenin overthrew a fucking monarchy. I'm here talking to you guys in a streamer chat. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is that there are levels to the game. There are levels to the game, and people in this chat are simply levels above the average person. And that doesn't necessarily make us better than anybody else, but it means that we have a distinct perspective on things. And I feel like we have kind of an obligation to try and change the world for the better, you know? Like, I feel like having that knowledge, you've got to do something good with that knowledge. It's not enough to know there's a problem. You've got to be willing to act on it. So yeah, and you got to be willing to meet people at their individual levels of consciousness. But after a certain point, man, there are just some people that are just irredeemable pieces of shit. And like, even if you do explain to them why they're wrong and you provide all the evidence, you debunk all their arguments, you're having a lengthy discussion with them, and you send them a 6-page dossier detailing all the primary first-hand accounts and documentation completely refuting their point of view. And they proceed to go, I'm not reading that. Stick their fingers in their ears and be all like, you know, la la la, I can't hear you. Some people are just irredeemable pieces of shit. And in a revolutionary situation, what do you do with people like this? I mean, what do you do with people like this? It's a serious question. And it's like, people like this are the people that got repressed under communism. Like, overwhelmingly, people like this were the ones getting repressed. And ironically enough, it's the people that are the most obsessed with freedom and liberty that are the ones that are the most hell-bent on oppressing and restricting the freedom of others, i.e. millionaires and billionaires and ideologically committed liberals. Yeah, no, Mao, yeah, Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, these guys are leagues above us, and they always will be. Yeah, some people are just closed-minded, you know? You can't really, you can call it stupidity if you want, but I refer to it as ignorance, true ignorance. Because ignorance is not a matter of what you don't know, it is a matter of what you won't know. And there's unfortunately a lot of people that are like that, more than there really need to be. My least favorite demographic at the moment are Gen X conservative Christians. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. I've worked with people like that many a time, and oh, boy, are they thick-skulled. Why did the French Revolution fail in 1968? I have no idea. I honestly could not tell you. France had like 6 revolutions, I think. Like, I don't know. Why did the German Revolution fail, the Bavarian Revolution fail in the early 1920s? It's a subject I haven't really researched, but I mean, I could probably dig up some literature, though. I once argued with my mom about the French protests where the age of retirement was raised. I said the French people have a right to protest, but she said that the protest caused chaos. Oh, yeah. So this is another thing that liberal-minded people do, is they're more concerned about the optics of the way something looks than they are about the dire ramifications of not lifting a finger to do anything about it. That's the thing. Liberals unfortunately do this all the time. They'll see, you know, any collateral damage from protesting, you know, like a burned down police station or whatever, and they'll like expect the 99% of people that were completely uninvolved with that to take accountability for the actions of like agent provocateurs or some crazy person who had the balls to burn down a police station. I'm not gonna lie, I actually think that's based. But no, certain actions that we consider very based, they consider horrible because it upsets the established order. Because at the end of the day, these people are in line with the established order. They don't really like oppose, even if you get them to acknowledge the problems with capitalism, they don't oppose capitalism at the end of the day. They don't really want to do anything. They don't want to change anything, you know? All they care about is that they've got comfort and convenience. They live a relatively comfortable and easy life, and they don't want to deal with anything that can upset that. They don't want to deal with anything that can force them to come face to face and come to terms with the contradictions of their own society and status quo that they support, tragically enough. I'm considering myself as a socialist here. If I'm opening communist, it would land me in jail. Yeah, if you're in a place that's exceptionally repressive, it might be wise to do that. What do we got here? What boomer Americans especially got indoctrinated into a pseudo-individualism that's transparent even in their own minds. Well, unfortunately, the thing that makes liberal ideology work in America has been the extent to which the US government has been able to basically bribe white middle-class Americans into being complicit, you know, because there's this whole narrative about individual responsibility, and if you work hard and you do all the things you're supposed to do, you too can be successful. You had a bunch of people, a lot of boomers that grew up and lived through the golden age of the United States. They worked in manufacturing. They enjoyed the best of Fordist Keynesianism. They made a shit ton of money because they were getting paid bank, working these long-term jobs with great benefits, unions, and all that. And then, so they made their money during the 70s. Stagflation occurs. The economy starts to flounder. And they're seeing, you know, the current version of capitalism isn't working as well as it used to, even if it is working with them. Ronald Reagan comes along, privatizes tons of shit, and invokes neoliberal austerity. All these people who saved up all this money through their 401k, their retirement, they've got their property, they got theirs, and now Reagan passed a bunch of laws and reforms that makes investment very palatable and tenable to this exact same group of people. So many of them proceed to get rich. Some of them turn into millionaires, even, you know? Many of them get set for life. They got their retirement lined up. They've got life on easy mode, they're comfortable. And so you have a generation of just these toxic people who have just been sold a sea of lies and been convinced it's truth just because they've got relatively easy and comfortable lives. But it's only for like 20%. We're only talking like 20% of Americans here, 25% of Americans. Vast majority of Americans, most Americans, like, did not like benefit from this at all. But the thing is, back then there was actually social fabric as well, which made those times a lot more palatable and a lot more enjoyable as well, because there was social order in a sense, and people had a more sense of communal bond with their fellow Americans. It isn't like today where people are super atomized and alienated. So that's the thing. They're a product of their environment. Thing is, every iterative generation past Gen X has been more progressive than the last. Millennials have been way more progressive on average than Gen Xers. Generation Z has been even more progressive than millennials. Generation Alpha's coming along, and they are just as, if not more progressive than millennials. And this trend, I think, is going to continue because I think it's clear to everybody here that capitalism is on the decline. It's on a nice slow decline. It's on its way out. So yeah, is what it is. My least favorite demographic. Oh yeah, I already read that one. Let's go to the bottom. 1970. The more people suffer under capitalism, the more inclined they will listen to socialist thought and entertain the idea of a system change. I mean, yeah, as I said earlier, and as Marx has said before me, Marx and Lenin, communism inevitably emerges out of historical necessity. Like, it's going to emerge. Like, a new movement is going to be born. Even if it hasn't happened yet, even if the labor movement's still kind of dead right now, a new movement is going to flare up and be born. And we need to position ourselves in the right places and space and time that we need to be in order to capitalize on it. During the Cold War, the first place the US and their allies used chemical weapons on is Greece. I did not know that. That is pretty gnarly. I really wanted to learn more about Greek communist revolution. I cannot help you there. My family lived there before 1948, and Slavs were never allowed to go back to Greece. Oh, that's interesting. Co-ops are better than capitalism. I mean, they're nice, but all I'm saying is they're not the solution. But if you can find a co-op or start a co-op, by all means, like, take care of yourself, man. Do what you got to do. We all have to work for a living and engage in the system on some level in order to secure our own means of subsistence. All right. What else do we got here? All right. You know what? I mean, we've pretty much been through everything I got, actually. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff here, like Kim Jong-un welcomes Putin. I could talk about that next. Or I could just look up some joke headlines. But, yeah. I don't know if you guys know about this, but North Korea and Russia are cozying up, which is interesting. See, when I think of an orderly civilization, I think of North Korea. Yeah, apparently Russia and North Korea are forming some sort of military pact. I don't know all the details of it, but Putin took a trip to North Korea. He paid them a visit, and
Out front tonight, we begin with the longest goodbye. Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un couldn't bear to part this evening, embracing on the tarmac, prolonging their goodbyes, both standing there across from each other, waving goodbye.
I don't know why, but I imagine when Trump went to North Korea, there's always like kind of a joke that goes in my mind that like Trump is actually into Kim Jong-un, like he's actually like attracted to him, and like he's coming home to his advisors after the trip, and he's like, "Yeah, I went on a few dates with Kim. He's a really cute guy. I really like him, and I can't wait to see him again. He gave me his number, and then he's like, wait, you had Putin over? You mean you and Vladimir Putin are good friends? But I thought you and me were good friends." And then, like, he gets all jealous and shit, and all of a sudden he's railing against North Korea during his election speeches, like, the following week. It'd be funny if that actually happened, but I don't know.
Once Putin got inside his plane, he continued to stare at Kim almost longingly, then waving, smiling ear to ear. Kim and his cheering squad waving enthusiastically back as hard as they could.
It was almost childlike. Putin departing after signing what was the most significant defense agreement for Russia since the Cold War. Nobody knows exactly all the details. We do know that it includes ammunition, missiles for Putin's war in Ukraine, for Kim, access to crucial Russian nuclear weapon technology. And much as Putin may think, or certainly used to think, that the leader of North Korea is beneath him, he needed this meeting, and he went all in for it. And Kim treated Putin like a czar. Look at this, massive banners of Kim and Putin everywhere, crowds everywhere. They pose for pictures together with these massive portraits behind them, taking time to drive each other around. You see Putin taking the wheel there. That is a new Russian-built limousine.
You see, so when I look at this, and I just think, we don't ever show this level of respect to other world leaders. We don't host parades, and we don't host like gatherings to celebrate their arrival. Like, whenever we have foreign leaders over, we treat them like they're utterly disposable. We treat them like crap. We don't treat them with any sort of respect. Definitely not third world countries. Like, could you imagine America ever putting on a show like this for another country that it's like not geopolitically aligned against, but not exactly on great terms with? Like, Russia and North Korea aren't on the best of terms, to my knowledge. But I could never see America doing this for another nation. Like, I could never see this country paying even a fraction of the respect to a sovereign leader of another country the way that North Korea just did for the Russians.
That Putin is driving. They're not being driven by a chauffeur, driving themselves. All the while, thousands of adoring fans looked on everywhere they went. I mean, it was a rock star reception fit for a czar. Just listen to how Russian state television, which was there on the scene, reported on it.
Russian state television.
The balloons were...
As we all know, private media is where all the freedom is at. State-run media? You mean media outlets where there's more accurate information and the institutions in charge are more democratically accountable from those involved? Fuck that noise. You know?
Were in the air. North Korean children came to greet Putin. Everything was involved. Soviet songs, Russian flags, and of course, blaring cheers of the Korean people in honor of the dearest guest's arrival from the invincible Russia.
The invincible Russia. This is quite a turn, because it was just 7 years ago that Putin was treating Kim like a persona non grata, way beneath him. I mean, listen to Putin then.
We do not recognize North Korea's nuclear status. Pyongyang's nuclear missile program grossly violates the UN Security Council resolution.
Wow, the tables have turned. Here's Putin today.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Russia's at fucking war with Ukraine, so they're trying to build other alliances and forge alliances. Like, it's all just opportunistic, really. Like, North Korea is a vulnerable third world country with a minuscule economy, and Russia is a second world country, the shell of its former self. And it's currently been politically ostracized from the collective of the Western world. So it makes sense that they're going to kind of let bygones be bygones, because they share. It's the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's all I see out of this. Putin is a straight opportunist. He ain't no anti-imperialist. Don't kid yourself. He's one of the people that became rich off the downfall of the Soviet Union. He was a little stooge. He was actually groomed by Yeltsin, I believe. And he actually wanted to be in NATO. He wanted to be an imperialist bloc. He wanted to be part of the imperialist bloc. He wanted the new Russian oligarchy to have their share of the loot, their share of the spoils of imperialist plunder. But they couldn't get their share of the loot because the Western world needs an enemy to fight. They need someone to ostracize. What's that? We just spent several years telling the leadership of Russia that there will be peace after the Cold War, that NATO will have no reason to exist after the Soviet Union dissolves. Turns out that was a lie. NATO's expanded all the way near to the Russian border. Russia is much weaker and a lot more vulnerable, and its people are less safe, less happy than ever before. And on top of that, Ukraine is currently being used as a proxy to basically wear down Russia over time and destroy Russia over time. Down to the last Ukrainian, I believe the phrase is. Down to the last Ukrainian. Gotta oppose Russia at all costs. You know what I'm saying? Gotta support these proxy wars.
Pyongyang has the right to take reasonable measures to strengthen its own defense capability, ensure national security, and protect sovereignty.
And Putin's state-run television anchors were almost giddy at the idea that this deal could give North Korea the power to strike the U.S. mainland.
Its ballistic missiles are already reaching Hawaiian Islands, not to mention Japan. The centers on the west coast of the United States could be under attack sometime later.
All of this part of a war lust that is deeply dangerous. The former director of the National Intelligence, James Clapper, tells out front the evolving partnership between Putin and Kim poses a serious threat to the national security of the United States. And Putin's total about-face on Kim and these...
Yeah, non-white people existing poses a threat to the United States. What's your point?
Past 7 years does make sense in the context of his singular focus on taking on the West, a singular obsession shared by Kim. The West, of course...
Or I should say non-white people. I mean, Putin's white, but like, you know, non-European, non-white people that are trying to protect their own interests is a threat to the United States because it will not stop until it has devoured the world, like the Cthulhu monster that it is, that must be stopped and opposed at all costs.
Short-handed to the United States, an obsession that may explain those long goodbyes and longing looks. Will Ripley is out front. He is in Hanoi in Vietnam. That is where Putin has just landed after leaving North Korea. Will, a very different welcome for Putin where you are standing tonight.
Aaron, it may have been a long goodbye in Pyongyang, but it was a cautious and quick hello here in Hanoi, Vietnam trying its best to host President Putin for a relatively toned-down but friendly state visit without alienating the U.S. and allies. Kim Jong-un, on the other hand, welcoming Putin in signature North Korean style.
Yeah, because fuck it, why not? I mean, North Korea is already public enemy #1 at the world stage. Like, the DPRK is like, they're pointing nukes at us. They could threaten to reinvade any second. The international community treats us like freaks. So fuck it. We're already ostracized. They're already sanctioning us into oblivion. We're already basically at war with the world. Why not? Why not align with another country that's being ostracized at this time? It only makes sense. It's geopolitically advantageous. But again, remember, all these media outlets and talking heads presents all this information in a way from a non-falsifiable proposition that other countries are permanently bad wrong, other countries that are not in alignment with U.S. geopolitical interests are bad, wrong, and evil, and monsters, and whenever they do something to secure their own hegemony or protect their own interests, it's bad, wrong, and bedong. So Putin and Kim, this is an evil alliance. They're forming a legion of doom. But when we form alliances with people, when we arm, fund, and enable, you know, fascist dictatorships all over the place, and when we fund, arm, and enable rich, wealthy oil baronies and settler colonial projects in the Middle East, and do alliance building and empire building of our own, it's perfectly fine. It's fair game. We're just spreading freedom and democracy, you know? It's what it is, man, whatever.
By the time Vladimir Putin's plane landed...
It's very funny to me. Like, when you understand, like, how shit actually works, how fucking crazy it is, like, how you can understand... Because the media does this all the time, and they lie constantly, too. I cannot wait to explore the whole narrative and the way things were framed with, like, Gaddafi in Libya. I'm just fucking saying. Like, they tried to accuse him of having rape dungeons, you know? And I know I've talked about this in a previous stream, but Gaddafi didn't have no motherfucking rape dungeons. If someone is a serial rapist and they have an entire battalion of bodyguards, all female bodyguards, and by the way, guys, women are specific. I don't want to say like it's genetically deterministic, be it because genetics or because just social conditioning and or because material conditions, probably a combination of things. Women have the innate ability to sniff out creeps. Like, women know when there's something wrong with another man around them. Like, they'll feel uncomfortable. They'll get uncomfortable. Like, women can sense this shit, like, about another man. They can tell when another man's a creep when in their presence. And out of the thousands of all-female battalion, the bodyguards of Gaddafi, he never made any of them feel uncomfortable. He didn't rape no one. He didn't assault no one. He didn't make a pass at anyone. He didn't sniff their hair. He didn't do any creepy shit. He treated them all with dignity and respect. That's not to say he didn't have girlfriends. I mean, he was a leader of a country. It's normal to have action on the side when you lead a country. But besides that, you know, I mean, even Dad Sharab in her testimony says, like, I've never seen him. I can't claim to know for 100% certainty, but I've never seen him lay a hand or talk to a woman like that ever. And she was around this man. She was his consultant. She was a partner of his that worked under him for like almost 2 decades. You'd think 2 decades constantly being around this dude, basically living with the man, being around him most or all the time. Like, she spends more time around this man than anybody else, almost as much as his bodyguards. And if his bodyguards and Dod Sharab are saying that they've never witnessed him acting like a rapist or any evidence whatsoever that he even did anything of the sort, I think it's safe to say that Gaddafi's probably not a rapist. And by the way, multiple human rights organizations actually investigated those allegations, and they found no evidence whatsoever. It's all hearsay. Gaddafi didn't rape. He didn't rape shit. And I can't wait to talk about that. Nope, he didn't whisper in their ears. He didn't sniff their hair. He didn't do any of the shit, you know, Joe Biden was, where he's like hugging a little 12-year-old girl, sniffing her hair and like trying to kiss her on the lips. Nothing, none of that shit. Back in colonial days, it was saying, bring civilization to the savages. Now it's bring democracy. Exactly. It's just, but on modern day framing. Bring freedom and democracy instead of, nah, man, never forget. Remember, guys, the people that are the most obsessed with freedom and democracy are usually the biggest tyrants because it's a form of projection. It's pure projection. When they're talking about freedom, they're talking about their freedom to restrict your freedom. Keep that in mind. Banging your bodyguards would be incredibly stupid if you think about it for more than even 30. Yeah, it would. But guess what? Again, his entire female battalion, they all felt in their testimony, by the way, firsthand account testimony from the leader and on top of all the women among his bodyguard, they all felt comfortable around him. They all felt relaxed and composed around him. And he never touched them inappropriately, made a pass at anyone. He treated them as equals, dignity, respect, and he did none of that, nothing of the sort. Which, if this guy's a sex-craved lunatic, why wouldn't you? You've got 1,000 fucking female bodyguards. Why wouldn't you take advantage of your position of authority and assault these women? You'd think testimonies would be coming out, but they haven't. And this is all stuff that's been confided in secret and released in The Colonel and I, Dod Sharab's book. So, I'm telling you right now, Gaddafi wasn't a rapist. And anybody who says he was is regurgitating CIA propaganda. That's the thing, man. Like I said, women instinctively know how to sniff out creeps. Like, any woman worth her weight in salt is going to be able to look at you, and after spending about 10, 15 minutes with you, she will immediately be able to tell whether or not you're a creep. In my personal experience, with the amount of time I've been around women, the amount of time I've spent with women, just saying. But anyways, the USA has always been a fraud, considering the founding frauds were open about their admiration of the Roman Republic. Oh, yeah, and they openly talked about making America an empire, too. Don't forget that. I wish I would have featured that in my Truth About the Founding Fathers video. But yeah. I believe that's it. I think we're done here. It's been a good stream. I've been at it for about, I don't know, 3 hours, almost 4 hours now. I'm going to go ahead and copy all these links for the sources, and I'm going to save them in the description. But I'm going to go ahead and cap things off. I hope this has been an enjoyable live stream, comrades. I'm planning on doing this again next week, at some point, probably Sunday again. I wanted to make these recurring, and because these are a lot of fun for me, and I hope this has been fun for you guys. Yeah, I greatly appreciate it. Like I said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Probably go live again next week. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have Gaddafi's Libya out by my birthday, but I'm definitely going to have something out. Or at least I'm going to try. But yeah, I hope This has been an enjoyable 4 hours of chemotherapy, escaping from the cancer and the madness of the world. So, red salute. Take it easy, comrades.